Three, two, one.
I will not. I am the grandson of Ephraim Black. I am the grandson of a chief. I wasn't born to follow you or anyone else. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Franchise Deep Dive with Jake and Josh, the podcast where we dissect, discuss, and break down all your favorite and least favorite movie franchises. I'm Jake.
And I'm Josh.
Where do we begin?
Are you ready, Jake? Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't know where we really begin with this. I guess for starters, this, guys, if you didn't look at the title for some reason, is part 2, the conclusion of our Twilight saga franchise deep dive. Last week, if you missed it, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, our last episode, we covered the first Twilight film as well as Twilight New Moon. And in this episode, to close things off, we are obviously discussing Twilight Eclipse and Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2. If you guys are new here, we discuss, like I said, we break down, dissect, discuss all that good stuff. We talk about our thoughts on the movies, things we didn't like, things we did like, talk about some quotes that we thought were pretty memorable, as well as kind of give you guys a little bit of backstory about the films in terms of, you know, who was behind the camera, as well as how well they did at the box office. But you know, are you ready to just get into things, Josh, or you have anything else for the intro?
Nah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, guys. We are starting off, obviously, with Twilight Eclipse, which came out and out of all the things I wrote down, I don't know why I forgot to write down when it came out. 2010. So Twilight Eclipse was released in 2010. If you guys didn't catch the last episode, we mentioned how each one of these films were all released 1 year apart, so really quick turnaround on their part. And this one, like the other two, is not a returning director. We have someone new taking over, and that would be one director, David Slade, whose other work I'm not particularly a fan of. I'm just kidding. I've never actually seen it, but I'm going to assume based on this movie that the rest are not particularly great. But with that aside, guys, it was made for a budget of $68 million and made $698.4 million at the global box office. And it's a continuation of the last two films to kind of set things off. If you guys, for some reason, didn't watch the first two Twilight movies and you're listening to us talk about this one and the next two, we're going to be spoiling everything. So if you're really worried about spoilers and you haven't seen the film, go check it out. Come back here. I, unfortunately, had to rent every single one of these except for Breaking Dawn Part 2 because for some reason I own that on Blu-ray. But Twilight Eclipse, I had to, rent off of Amazon Prime. And the plot is, I don't think it takes long after the events of the last film. So where we kind of left off, Edward ditched Bella after she almost got killed at her birthday party by his brother. And him and the Cullens just disappeared. She began this really close-knit friendship with Jacob Black, who turns into a werewolf throughout that film. And you find out him and all his friends and his parents and shit, they're all werewolves too. And Laurent shows back up from the first film. He gets killed pretty quickly by the werewolves. But Victoria is still causing problems, and that's sort of the villain of this movie, as now we find out that Victoria is raising an army of newborn vampires over in Seattle with plans to attack the Cullens and kill Bella, as Bella's mate, Edward, killed James, her mate, back in the first film. So it's a little bit of a revenge tale, and like I said, she's building an army up in Seattle with plans to come and attack the Cullens, and it's sort of the Cullens making amends with some of the werewolves and kind of teaming up with them to protect Bella and fight against the vampires who are coming after them. Not the best explanation, but...
Let's note that Victoria is now officially replaced by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes. Yep, I still don't know how to say her name, but Rachel or Raquel Lefebvre played Victoria in both Twilight and Twilight New Moon, and as Josh mentioned, she is now played by Bryce Dallas Howard, the daughter of director Ron Howard, and she's also in some of those Jurassic World movies and an episode of Black Mirror, and some other stuff. But yep, she takes over.
Now, I just want to, I'm not really fast forwarding, but I just wanted to get your thoughts, just in case I forget by the time we get to the last movie.
Correct.
In the credits.
Yes.
I don't even know how you do that. If you recast, are you supposed to put like the actor that was in more films or the one that was in like, or if it's, I don't know. Are you supposed to? I guess it's weird to put the same character twice. I guess so. I don't know. Felt kind of bad for what's her name? The original Victoria.
We'll just call her Miss Lefebvre.
Miss Lefebvre. Yeah, Miss Lefebvre got no love at like the finale credits, but whatever.
I'll be honest. I
didn't do that.
I didn't even catch it because once the credits started, I shut the movie off. So I didn't stay for those.
I rode those credits out.
Oh, dude! Any cool post-credit scenes? Is Edward gonna show up in the next Avengers movie?
Can't tell you. You gotta go watch.
Oh, darn it! Yeah, that's how they trap you. That's how they really get you. But yeah, this is where we've talked about this before, but this is where I feel like certain films in the movie entertainment industry can have a really bad and negative impact. And as much as I love Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, they were sort of the first to kind of split the last book in a franchise up into a Part 1 and Part 2. And then Twilight decided that they wanted to do that too, and that's why we got a Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2. Difference is that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is over 700 pages. I believe Breaking Dawn is only like 400 something. So
really?
I definitely don't think it's anywhere near the page count of Harry Potter, but either way, let's not get too far ahead as... Now, you had not seen Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2, but you had seen Twilight Eclipse before, correct?
Yeah, and it's weird because, I didn't rate it on Letterboxd, and I was watching it, and some scenes I really remembered, and others I really didn't. I wonder if when I watched it, I was just, dozing off. Maybe that's why I didn't rate it. So, there were some scenes I very much remembered. I remembered most of it, but then some scenes I was like, I don't remember this happening at all. But, yeah, again, I watched the first 3 a year ago.
First time?
First time.
First time,
ever.
okay.
So yeah, it was Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2 I never even saw a scene of, really. Unless it was a scene on Instagram or something like that.
Fair enough, fair enough. So I guess to kind of kick things off in this discussion, what is your... So you didn't really remember. You remembered some scenes from Eclipse, but now in this viewing, you're a little more attentive. You gotta watch it with the mindset.
I definitely remember that opening scene. I remember the opening scene.
Well, not just that. I just want to ask what your thoughts are on the movie. Initial thoughts on your second but sort of first viewing, because again, you don't really remember everything. How did you feel about Twilight Eclipse?
Honestly, still thought it was bad, but maybe coming from New Moon, I thought it was considerably better. And I don't mean considerably better that this was good. I still think it was not good. But I liked that they did bring a coolness back to the film, a tone in terms of
it's less warm in the color grade than the previous movie.
They kind of go back to that cold atmosphere that they had in the first one. Not as intense, and I maybe for the better, because again, we talked about Twilight having its charm and stuff like that that it's really had its own personality.
Mm-hmm.
But was it actually colored better? This one, I felt like it was a little bit I don't know. Maybe that it was toned back. It felt a little bit more acceptable, but I don't know. I still don't think this looked good.
No.
It still kind of had that basic look as Newman, but at least it did a little bit more with trying at least to maybe it's just because there was wintry scenes in there, so that helped its case. I don't know. That
might have done it. I actually, I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree. I actually, for all of the faults in New Moon, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I liked Eclipse as a movie better than New Moon for a couple different reasons, and we'll get into that. But in terms of just the overall look, because it was something that we harped on so much in the previous episode about the first 2 films in the franchise, to me, I didn't get a lot of vibes of the cool color tones in this one in any sort of similar comparison to the first one. And maybe that's just because the first one is so overly stylized and very overt in its color correction.
It's so damn blue. It's blue.
Very blue. And this one, to me, I actually kind of dislike the look more than New Moon. I actually found a little bit more memorable in New Moon to where I can point to the first Twilight and I can say, yeah, that movie has such a vivid style and personality to the way it looks, and it may not always be for the best, but at least it has something I can point to. And then again, we went to New Moon, and our criticisms of New Moon are going to be my criticisms of the preceding next three films. But at least in New Moon now I know in that episode we said that we didn't really get that vibe of like the warmer tones, but I guess in hindsight, after seeing the next three, you can kind of look and see, oh yeah, there is a little bit of a better warmth to the color palette and the colors and the more, I guess, brown and orange color tone and palette that the film has. Whereas I feel like not Total Eclipse, but Twilight Eclipse, it has such a bland look. And I know I said the last one was bland, but this one somehow is even worse when it comes to lacking any sort of visual style and flair. And whereas I sort of, and going back to a previous episode we done on Harry Potter, whereas I really liked kind of pulling the colors and the tones back in Deathly Hallows Part 1, because again, I'm on record as not being the biggest fan of the look of Half-Blood Prince. This film, again, and maybe it's just because there's more to chew on in the Harry Potter movies, story-wise and character-wise, than what's going on in these, and just much better filmmaking as a whole. But in this, I just really wanted something to gravitate towards in terms of like the filmmaking, and not that you really go into these hoping to see an art house film with masterful craftsmanship or anything, but this movie is just so bland in terms of how it looks and how it's shot. And the last one had bland cinematography, but again, you did have those kind of warmer color tones, which was a heavy contrast from the first one. This one sort of meets in that middle ground, and it just furthers what we said, where it just feels like as these movies go along, and I'll get into it more when we discuss Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2, but they just become more and more sterilized in terms of the director's presence behind the chair. It really feels like as they go along, they lose more and more personality, and they just get more and more stale and stagnant and almost factory made. You know what I'm saying?
I get it. And honestly, it could have been just me just being fooled by the snowy mountains. I don't know.
The snow was a nice touch. The snow was a nice touch.
Again, though, we watched three of these. I feel like I obviously remember this one. Not the least. Like, I remember scenes. I can't pull that much visually, because again, this isn't good. It's not good, but no. I still think. See, now I feel like I got to watch New Moon and Eclipse back to back, but I really remember not liking New Moon, like, at all. Here's where I'm gonna say like a little bit why I kind of prefer Eclipse over New Moon, and it's really not because of the visual aesthetic, but the biggest issue with most of these films, I would say, except for this one and Breaking Dawn Part 2, the films virtually have no plot. Yeah. Most of the first Twilight is just Edward and Bella having these really awkward interactions and immediately falling for each other. You get a little bit of Bella sort of uncovering what Edward is and learning that he's a vampire and the Cullens are all vampires. But it's really, I wouldn't say it's a driving narrative, and New Moon probably even less so, because Edward sort of just dips, leaves Bella in the fucking woods, and then the rest of the movie is just Jacob and Bella, them having their little relationship and not becoming intimate with each other, but developing feelings towards each other and whatnot. Whereas Eclipse, I feel like the edge it has over both of those ones in terms of just what can hold your attention is it has a driving narrative. You have the immediate setup that you already know that Victoria is still at large. She's still out and about. We get a little bit of her in New Moon, not too much. And she's really not a prominent figure in that film. But, from the ending of the first one to her appearances in the second one, it seems that she's like the sort of overarching antagonist of these first three. And you can, bring up the Volturi a little bit, and they do have a little bit of a presence in New Moon and a little bit in Eclipse, but really Victoria is the overarching antagonist, especially of New Moon and of this film. And her raising that army in Seattle with the intention of coming to attack the Cullens and them having to resort to kind of making amends with the werewolves, despite being sort of natural-born enemies, and that sort of recruitment process and that team up, along with the driving narrative that these evil newborn vampires and Victoria are coming to get Bella.
So you have a little bit something to be like, okay, I understand what this film is trying to do. It doesn't do it particularly well in any regards, but at least there's a story, there's a narrative.
Right. And I want to add that something else that this film does, a good point on like more of like a plot and stuff like that, and like having there's like kind of like, because we talked about in the first one how stuff doesn't really happen until like the last half hour or something like that, right?
Yeah, correct.
And this one you feel that there's something building consistently.
It's paced better than the other two.
Yeah. But there's also finally, even though it's not really done that well, like I don't think much is done well in this series, but at least you kind of have that direct conflict now between Jacob and Edward that kind of keeps you a little interested, more so than the second one, because the second one, it was there, but it was like underneath like the surface, because it was like that was the Jacob movie.
It's the Jacob movie. Edward's gone for 90%.
There was no Edward presence at all. This one, you get a little back and forth. You finally get kind of like that entertaining conflict. Where really, I think like the teams really, I guess, I don't know if like Team Edward, Team Jacob really started here in this film or after the second one. I don't know. But
well, I gotta ask you, are you Team Edward or are you Team Jacob?
I'm never gonna be on Team Jacob. Like, and especially after this movie, let me just fucking like complain about some stuff.
We'll save it for Breaking Dawn, but I know what you want to get into, and don't worry.
No, I'll get into just some things in this one. I'll bite my tongue.
Let's start off with the fact that in this movie he kisses Bella without her consent.
Yeah. Jake, I wasn't even going to go into it just yet. I was going to start light and get to that point. But yeah, I have
tear into it, brother.
Well, my first note is this was like the first 15 minutes. I was like, Jake is such a piece of shit. right in front of Edward, he just like loudly says, "Hey, beautiful." Like, get the shit out of here. Like, if you really love someone, have a little respect for their boundaries. I know you don't like Edward, but show a little restraint. You asshole. But
well, they try to paint it like Jacob really cares for Bella and he cares about her best outcome, but in reality, in this film and the next one showcase, he's really just out for himself.
It is all about him. And case in point, what Jake said was the kiss, and I wrote, how was anyone Team Jacob after that? That is insane to have in there. Like, and that was obviously in the books, right? I mean, there's no way they just put that in there.
No,
so
I don't think...
It's just a weird thing to do to your character when you're trying to build like this, like, you want to root for Edward, but you also want to root for Jacob. You completely, really ruin it with that. I mean, you already kind of ruined it with, like, even in the second one, I kind of noticed, like, he was really just about himself. But this one, he's just performing, like, acts of, like, borderline crime. You know, he's just, like...
He's out for himself.
I'm going to say forcefully kissing someone is just insane.
And when she tries to get a little bit of payback by punching him, she breaks her fucking hand on his face.
Yeah.
I will say that scene is terrible, but it does lead me to, again, one of my favorite Charlie moments. And it's just when Jacob tells him what happened, and Jacob is just like, I kissed Bella and she broke her hand on my face. Charlie's reaction is just like, he doesn't know what to do with this information, and
Charlie is too... Listen, I know you love Charlie, but Charlie pisses me off because...
No,
he does, because here's the thing. Kind of like Jacob, he's not really looking out for Bella's best interest. He wants Bella to end up with Jacob more than Edward. That's very apparent.
Because he's pissed that he was fine with Edward until Edward just fucking abandoned her in the last movie.
But he's fine with Jacob just like forcefully kissing his daughter.
Well, he doesn't know that he forcefully kissed her. Jacob just tells him that he kissed her. But I mean, it's clear that he doesn't really like Edward at this point.
Well,
so
I don't know. I don't like it.
I think Charlie is too much. Charlie is much more behind Bella's best interest than Jacob is, whereas so much of what Jacob does in these movies feels so selfish and like he's really just out because he has these intense feelings for Bella, which get completely removed in the next film. But that aside, one thing that these movies do that pisses me off, and why in hindsight I am also confused why anybody is Team Jacob in this, the only thing I can think of is he's ripped. That's it. He's got like a fucking six-pack, washboard abs, and like huge biceps. Like, I get it, he's ripped. He also still sounds like a whiny bitch every time he talks, but that aside, I'm really confused why there was ever even like a consideration that these movies are a quote unquote love triangle. Now, I will say in that sort of defense, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, there is a scene in this film where Bella passionately kisses Jacob, but it's really only done to keep Jacob from running off and doing something stupid. It's not done because she also shares these intense feelings, but nothing in New Moon or this movie ever convinced me that there is any outcome where Bella would choose Jacob. She has made it clear multiple times, and this goes back to your point about boundaries, that Bella has made it multiple times clear that she is always and will forever choose Edward. It is always Edward. It has always been Edward, and it will never change. And Jacob just continuously persists, where half of my notes in Total Eclipse are, I keep calling it Total Eclipse, Twilight Eclipse. Half of my notes when watching the film are just, Jacob is the epitome of not taking a hint. Like, he's not cluing in at all.
How about not taking no for an answer? How about that?
There is a very clear line between persistence and a meaningless dead-end cause, and Jacob is completely unaware of that line at all times.
I wrote, so like in that note, I wrote kind of like what happens in the scene. Bella says repeatedly, she doesn't feel that way for him, and he also repeatedly says, you just don't know it yet. You will, though. Like, over and over. And she's like, no, I don't. These are my feelings.
Yeah.
I love Edward. I don't feel that for you. And he just keeps saying, you will. Like, I know you more than you know you. And she's like, I don't.
Not only does he say that, but he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says, I don't believe you.
Yeah. And then he just kisses her forcefully. Oh my God.
His inclusion in these movies is just so poorly handled because, like I said, he's just not a likable character. He kind of acts like a whiny asshole 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. And there's just very few moments where you're rooting for him because it's just and as an adult, it's even more abundantly clear because, again, these are written for young teenagers, which makes things even creepier when we get into the next movies. But it's just so evidently clear. Again, she does not love you that way. She loves you like a brother. She does not love you like she wants to be with you. So
let me just say something. Like, as a new viewer of Twilight, I only know so much about these movies. I really just know like the memes and I know the teams. Like, there was a big divide between the teams. Going into these, I was really expecting throughout this series a bigger, like, a more realistic conflict. Like, I truly thought it was split the entire series between these two, and I'm like, it's not even close. Like, A, who I should be rooting for, and B, who Bella wants. Like, but I thought it was like more of just like a, I don't know. Not that I thought that they would handle these characters better, but the way people talked about these movies, or the way people talked about their side, their team, I was like, oh, there's a good case for both. Like, I wonder what I'm going to be on. No, not even close. I can't understand the delusion of Team Jacob, but except for what you said, he was hotter. Like, that was it, and that's crazy.
Somehow, the Hunger Games managed to do the whole love triangle thing better than Twilight, which this is kind of what like kickstarted that whole every single YA adaptation from here on out. It always had to have a love triangle. Yeah. Problems we're somehow still suffering from to this day, even though that kind of YA phase has kind of died out. But man, there's just, okay, so one thing I want to talk about is, and one thing that I loosely like about this movie, but also just kind of raises more issues with the overall franchise, the 5-film saga, is that they do a little bit of world building like they did in the last movie, but they add a little bit of lore and backstory to some of the characters, specifically Jasper and Rosalie, who we find out in the film through flashbacks as they are sort of divulging their history to Bella. You find out that Jasper was an army, the leader of a newborn army, like a general.
He was a cowboy.
Well, not really a cowboy. He fought for the Confederacy. He fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. He was like a general in like the Texas Army or some shit.
I thought he was a literal cowboy, honestly.
It's so confusing to me because you've never seen Vampire Diaries?
No.
So in Vampire Diaries, there is it's obviously about vampires. One of the characters, when they're talking about their backstory, he also fought for the Confederacy. And now I'm starting to see a trend where, for some reason, vampires in a lot of these fictional stories fought for the Confederacy. And again, they live in Forks, Washington, and I understand they've moved around a lot, but you could very easily just rewrite that to he fought for the side that didn't want to keep slavery.
Yeah. Were you thrown off? I mean, probably not. You've seen these, but where the hell did that Southern accent come from?
He's from Texas.
Jasper didn't talk much in the first two, but he talked a little bit. That was not that thick. It was so distracting.
I guess they hide it because, Carlisle was also born in, like, London, and so he doesn't have, like, a British accent or anything. I don't really particularly know. But we also sort of find out that, we find out about Rosalie's past and how she was married to this guy.
Was that this one, or was that Breaking Dawn Part 1? I forget.
No, wait.
It probably was Eclipse. I'm just trying to remember.
Oh, dude, they're all blending together at this point.
I know.
I thought it was Eclipse because this was the one where we start to get a little bit of backstory.
Yeah.
Well, let me see.
Actually, no, it was Eclipse. There's no way it was Breaking Dawn Part 1 because that was too focused on a certain plot point the entire time. So, yeah, it was Eclipse. Okay. It just seems like I recently watched that scene, but yeah. Well, I liked her kind of inclusion there. I liked kind of getting that backstory on her. I didn't care about the Jasper backstory, honestly.
Yeah.
But Rosalie actually, like, I thought it was a nice addition. It kind of made you feel empathy for her, and like,
I just don't understand why we're waiting till the third film in a franchise to start developing these characters and to kind of give you a little bit of depth and backstory to them. Because like you said, what you find out about Rosalie is fairly interesting. It's pretty horrible, but you find out that she was married to this guy, and one night him and his friends assaulted her and left her for dead, to which she was then turned into a vampire. And I love that she hunted them down one by one and left him for last, specifically so that he would know she was coming for him. It just adds a little bit of darkness, a little bit of layers to her character. And they also kind of explain, we got a little bit of it in some of these movies through dialogue, but it also explains why she is not a fan of Bella and why she's acted so cold towards her. And it's not just because they were bringing in a human, it's because all Rosalie ever wanted was a nice, normal, happy life with a husband and children, and just a normal life, live, die, that sort of thing. And Bella is seemingly throwing that away, and to her that is just really awful. So you kind of get a little bit of development there, which I did appreciate. But it made me think, okay, so then are we going to get Emmett's backstory in this one? Are we going to develop Esme a little bit? And they don't do that either. So they really only do Rosalie and Jasper in this. I
will say, even though I liked the addition to adding that backstory for Rosalie, her backstory seems a little unrealistic to me, very unrealistic to me, because she's telling Bella how her life was perfect when she was a human being. Now, I'm not saying I don't buy into the assault part. I don't buy into when she says they left me for dead. Okay, you lost me. I don't get it. Where did this come from with your husband? What? Not that I'm saying I get the assault, but I can see that happening more so than the husband just randomly. It's not like it was even caused by anything. She didn't do anything wrong. Why would you leave her for dead? She's your wife. You guys were so happy. I just thought that was
well. He's one of the ones that assaulted her.
No. I get that, but why leave her for dead?
I think they assumed that she was dead. She was dead.
From what? I'm trying to remember the scene exactly.
They don't really show it, but they.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not.
I guess, but then maybe I just don't buy into the entire thing. I don't buy into going that extreme with it so abruptly. It didn't seem like there was any hints of it. I get it's a quick flashback, and it's just to show that she has a traumatic past. But I don't know. It seems a little lazy.
I mean, I've seen real world stories where people are my spouse, my significant other they were perfect up until they weren't, and that some people are very good at putting on masks and facades. So it's very it's very plausible in my opinion that he could have just been keeping up a front, and then, you know, one night got wasted with his friends and things went horrible. And I don't know. I liked that. That was one of the few kind of scenes that I don't unironically like. I just enjoyed at least getting some character development for her. And in the vein of like that, I don't love Jasper's backstory, or maybe I would have preferred it to be handled or executed a little differently, but I thought his, like you said, was a little bit weaker. But again, I just like to at least know a little bit about these people. But yeah. I guess kind of going more into the plot, one of the issues I had is that the reason that Jasper is kind of vital in this movie is that he is the most recent of the vampires, and also he has experience with newborns. He led a newborn army back in the day, again during the whole Confederacy thing, and so he has the most experience with newborns, which brings up a kind of lore issue in this franchise that I have, is that you're told that newborns are the strongest of vampires because they're new to it, so the venom is fresh in their veins, and that's why this newborn army that Victoria is building in Seattle is such a threat, and why they need multiple vampires and also the help of the werewolves. My issue is in the last movie and in this one, and in the next ones, we are led to believe that the Volturi are the biggest and most prominent threat, and that is because they're the most powerful and whatnot. But how are they the most powerful if they are significantly older than a newborn? Like they've been around for a really long time. You'd expect with the plot that you're given and the backstory and the information that the older a vampire gets, the less powerful they are. But that doesn't really seem to be the case, again, because we're told the Volturi are the big threat, the big bad.
I didn't think about that, but that's a good point. Yeah, so like, is it always the older you get or the weaker you get, or is it like you get to a certain point where you're kind of like at the same strength level?
I wonder if it's more particularly know.
I wonder if it's more like that, because like then it really wouldn't make sense if it's like you just keep getting weaker the older you get.
Well, one of the issues with the Volturi I also have is I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the next film, but when we're talking about all these in tandem, it kind of works. But in the next film, when you're kind of, and we'll get into why, but the Volturi are coming after the Cullens, and they're the big bads essentially of the last two films in the franchise. The issue is that what Carlisle says is the Volturi are threatening because of their offensive weapons alone. And, we have found out in the first Twilight film and preceding ones that different vampires might have certain special abilities or gifts or powers. So you're led to believe, they have Jane, who can just cause people immense amounts of pain with her mind. In this film, actually, I don't even know if it's this film. In either this one or one of the next two, you find out that she has a brother named Alec who has like these smoke monster powers that come out of his hand. I think that's
the next one. It might even be the last one.
It's confusing that we've never seen or heard of Alec before, especially in New Moon when they go to visit the Volturi or this film. But that aside, why
not just make that guy with the long blonde hair her brother? Why like bring a new guy that's her brother? It's her brother, right? Jane?
Yeah. I guess they say it's his brother, but
why not just make that guy with the long hair that kind of looks like Jasper? Why not just make them like?
I couldn't tell you, but
like you. And they kind of look more alike.
So when they're describing the Volturi and why they're so threatening, it's like, they're not super threatening because of their numbers or because of they have newborns, and as you find out, newborns are quote unquote the strongest. So you're led to believe, so it's just the offensive weapons. But then when we get to later films, the last one particularly, you're shown that, no, it's not the offensive weapons. It's that the Volturi literally have a fucking army of vampires. Like they have a ton of them on their side. And so it makes me confused as to like, did they not think this through when they're like developing the Volturi and this backstory of, and again, you include plot details. Why do you have to include the detail that newborns are the strongest? Can't you just say something along the lines of, they're more threatening because
they're more vicious, or they're
vicious. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They fight without thinking or something like that, but they go out of their way in this film and in preceding ones to tell you that newborns are the strongest. When you're, first turned into a vampire, that's when you're most powerful. And so it's just really confusing lore.
And I guess it makes sense why. Well, no, it doesn't actually. Why is Victoria so strong?
Well, that's another question I had in this is, right in New Moon, there's a scene, and we kind of highlighted in the last one where, and I think we even talked about it a little bit, but where we're told, oh, look, Bella makes a joke. She says, you can't run with vampires. They're fast. They're too fast or whatever. And one of the werewolf boys says, oh yeah, well, we're faster. And, when Jacob's talking about them going after Laurent, it looks pretty quick and effortless. So maybe you're led to believe, oh, okay, werewolves are faster than vampires. They chased him down pretty easily. Didn't seem like that bad of a fight. So then I'm confused as to the speed levels of these fucking fictional characters, because are some vampires faster than others? Is that does that vary depending on the
It sounds
particular?
like they are.
Because Victoria evades the werewolves in this one, and even in 3 a little bit with almost no issues.
I don't think the wolves are actually faster. I think that was like Jacob or whoever said it just saying it because they're prideful.
But they caught Laurent.
Yeah, but I think sometimes they can be, I guess, because in the first one, the baseball game, they say, "Oh, Edward's pretty fast. Aren't you all fast?"
I guess it's just I don't know. But
it doesn't make sense. Like who? It doesn't make sense who kind of gets these powers over others. What makes them? I'm also confused about the abilities, which I guess we can wait to go into until the last one.
Oh, I want to talk about that for sure at some point.
Yeah. So I'll hold my horses for that one.
But getting back to
I don't know why
Eclipse.
Victoria is so powerful, and why is I mean, I'm not gonna go too much into the Laurent because that was the last movie, but why does Laurent seem so weak? I guess it's because he's so old.
Maybe, I guess, but
Carlisle is strong. I think
then the Volturi are super strong, apparently.
Yeah.
So, and they're the oldest, I guess. So,
yeah,
it really doesn't make any fucking sense. So one thing I do want to kind of highlight in this movie that I unironically kind of liked in terms of just writing decisions, which again, there's not a lot to highlight, but this is one that I kind of found myself enjoying, is that kind of through the first 2 movies, Bella is just totally fine and okay and totally down to become a vampire. She really doesn't have much second thought, whereas this film does sort of explore the other side of things, where she is starting to have some doubts about becoming a vampire and how it'll significantly change her life and how it'll impact her relationships with her parents and her friends. And so I kind of enjoyed them exploring that element a little bit in this movie. It's not handled particularly well, but I appreciate the effort to at least... I'm glad that it wasn't so straightforward the entire saga of 5 films, where she's just never had any sort of doubts or second guessing herself on really just changing her life in the most extreme of ways. So I kind of did appreciate that. Not sure if you feel particularly the same way or it didn't work for you.
No, yeah, I do, and I like the continued dilemma of Edward and her kind of Edward being very reluctant and well, actually, you know what? No, let me scratch that because I don't think I do like it, because it doesn't. I get it to an extent, and I feel like the reason I was saying I liked it is because it provides a little bit more care and depth into Edward of he doesn't want to take her soul and everything, but I don't get it. I don't get why everybody is so down on being a vampire. I don't understand.
Well, I mean, would you? I guess that begs a more personal question. Would you want to become a vampire?
So if I was Bella, and I met someone that was I was that much in love with, I wouldn't mind it, honestly, because, I mean, I don't know. I don't get what the problem is, because they still have they have a heart, kind of you could say they don't literally, I guess.
Well, yeah, you have to have some blood circulating to get a heart on. So,
actually, I don't get what they have inside of them. Do they do they have blood? They don't need to breathe, right?
You cannot get an erection without having blood. So.
Right, but they're not supposed to have blood.
No.
Right. Okay, so I don't get that. But,
they're also supposed to sparkle in the sun, but in this movie and Breaking Dawn Part 1, Edward is constantly in the sun and does not sparkle a single fucking time.
I forgot about that, and I did.
So did the filmmakers. So did the filmmakers. It's honestly insane. The entire time when, spoiler alert, guys, for the next movie, but again, we're going to jump ahead here and there. When they get married and they go on their honeymoon, literally they are in the sun so very often, and not one time. And I'm pretty sure in Breaking Dawn Part 2, after they, change Bella and whatnot, I don't think that she sparkles in the sun either, or any of them. And also, you mentioned it when we were texting the other day, but another fucking problem I have with these movies is somehow in every single movie they proceedingly look less and less like vampires as the story progresses. Literally by the end of the movies, the only indication that they may be any sort of non-human is their eye color is a little different. And because the Cullens are vegetarians, it doesn't turn their eyes any sort of like dark blood red. So for that reason, they just look like people with really, really nice eyes. I don't get that.
So, well, back to what I was saying. I don't get like why you wouldn't want to be a vampire like that much. To the
I
point
wouldn't
where
want to
it's
be
like,
a vampire.
That's fine, but she does, and I don't get why he's so like insistent on saying no, because like, no, I just don't get it. Is it just the principle of I don't want to damn your soul?
Yeah,
is that it?
I that's actually, I go back and forth because when that sort of plot point is initially introduced to us, I actually kind of appreciate that Edward doesn't want to change her because he truly feels to his core that he's damned his own soul to hell. So there's a part of him that is maybe religious and at least believes in something after death. And so I did think that plot was kind of interesting. But when I tell you that the entire 5-film Twilight saga only really encompasses a 2-year time span, it makes it a little bit less cool when he's, after the first 1-2 movies, maybe a little bit in the third one, he's really not that opposed to changing her into a vampire because that's his soulmate and he wants to spend eternity with her. So a little bit of selfishness on Edward's part, and he kind of goes back on his initial convictions, but
I like it. I like it. Because you're respecting her wishes. She wants to be a fucking vampire. Let her be young and beautiful with you forever. How's that? Like that's what I'm saying. Like, why would you not want to like look young, be young forever? You don't have to breathe. You don't have to sleep. You can run really fast. Like, what are the cons? Oh, I don't have blood flow apparently. Well, like technically I don't.
I'll name a couple. You have a very hard to control lust for human blood. So you're almost certainly bound to kill at least one person.
Only the brief period. Only like the first.
That's if you choose to go vegan, on their words, not mine. But
Which she would have a big support system.
It's not about the support system. We're not talking about Bella here. We're talking about would you, an average person, want to become a vampire? And I honestly like that they explore that there's parts of her, because at first it's like, oh cool, super speed, super strength, that sort of stuff. I see everything as if I'm on mushrooms. It sounds great on the surface.
I'm talking about in Bella's point of view. You are Bella.
But that's why in the first 2 movies, she doesn't really have any reservations about becoming a vampire. But then in the third one, when she starts interacting with her mom and when she starts interacting with her dad, and they're saying these things to her, like when her mom gives her the quilt and she's like, oh, you can give this to your daughter. And at the time, children are out of the question and they're not a possibility. And Bella kind of has this realization like, oh, I'm never going to be able to give her grandkids. I'm never going to be able to have children of my own. She's choosing a life where all the people that she knows and loves, and she does love her parents, and I think that's conveyed decently well in these movies, but except how, in the first one when she absolutely fucking guts Charlie for no reason. But outside of that, she seems to really love her mother and father, and just like this idea that I don't want to say you're throwing away your life, but you are, again, changing your life in the most extreme way possible. It would be incredibly, incredibly tough to see the people in your life for the brief time you're probably able to see them before they start to notice you're not aging, and see them outage you and grow past you, and people that were younger than you are now 30, 40 years older than you, and being like, they, at one point in these movies, they are toying with the idea of they have to tell Charlie that Bella died. Like, they were planning on faking Bella's death, and that's like a devastating thing to do to a person.
Listen, it goes over just fine. Let me just let everybody know it goes over just fine. But the only thing I agree with is the family thing. That is the only reservation I can take. Sure. But I get if she does. I get if you personally have your doubts about it. But for someone say I don't know, I guess half of them are fine with her becoming a vampire, but being that stern, acting like your life is so terrible, come on, is it really that bad? Maybe if you want a kid and you can't have one, fine. I get it.
It's not about, I guess, her life being bad. I guess it's just she's starting to finally see what kind of effect and what kind of impact she's going to leave by changing. Yeah.
I'm fine with her seeing that. Fine. But let's be real. I mean, being a vampire sounds badass. It sounds cool as hell.
I just do not agree. I'd rather be a werewolf.
Okay, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah, because I'd get really awesome powers. I'd get to turn into a big fucking dog. And I would have a normal life where I could actually grow old and have children.
I don't want to grow old. I want to have kids, but I don't want to grow old.
I mean, nobody does, but imagine a life where you never get old and life would start to get boring. Like, personally, and maybe this is like the pessimist fucking, what is it called? What do they call him in The Big Lebowski?
Oh, no.
Fuck, what are they called? Not pessimist. It's like an ultimate form of pessimism. I can't think of the word. It's not coming to me.
Not cynicism?
No, not cynicism. It's like an advanced form of cynicism. Nihilist.
Oh.
A nihilist.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't want to sound like a nihilist, but the idea of living however old some of the characters are in this, 200, 300, 400 years old, that sounds exhausting. Not even, and like the idea of like, think about how much you cherish sleep. Imagine it's not just physical exhaustion. I believe that vampires don't get physically exhausted, but imagine the mental exhaustion of never being able to just close your eyes and shut off for 8 to 10 hours.
I don't think they do. I don't think they feel mentally exhausted that much.
It's not possible.
I think it is for a vampire.
Not even for a vampire. It's imagine like you go through a funeral or you go through a horrible day of life, and you can't even go to sleep. You just have to be awake forever. That sounds awful.
Yeah, but I also don't like that we have to sleep.
I love sleeping.
It feels nice, but I don't like that a third of my life is wasted doing it.
No, and I see that argument. You'd waste less of your life. But again, I just think that mental exhaustion would just absolutely break you down mentally, like to where the thought of not sleeping ever, it's actually kind of a downright terrifying thought to not be able to just lie your head down, close your eyes, and really just shut off from everything for a couple hours. But, let us know in the comments, guys. I actually saw you can leave comments on Spotify now. So if you're someone who listens to the podcast on Spotify, let us know down in the comments, would you want to become a vampire? Yes or no? And if you want to give us your reasonings behind your answer, that would be appreciated as well. But back to Twilight Eclipse. How did you feel about the final fight sequence between the young vampire army led by one Victoria and the team of Cullens/werewolves? Did you enjoy the final fight? Or?
Not really, because I felt no threat. They were building this strength storyline between the newborns. It didn't seem that different at all. Yeah. Even between Victoria and what's the kid's name?
Riley.
I mean, it was like the easiest thing I've ever seen in my life. I guess Bella helped Edward a little bit that end fight, but I don't know, man. It felt very quick. It felt a little anticlimactic to me.
No, I actually agree on that one. I was getting really psyched because I haven't seen this movie probably in a couple years. The last time I watched these films was with my friends in college, but I was getting kind of amped up. I was like, oh, okay, young vampire army versus the Cullens. We're finally going to get some action in these movies. Some exciting stuff is going to go down. And you're right, anticlimactic is probably the best word to describe the final fight. It just doesn't really... It's not particularly shot horribly or edited terribly in the sense that it really takes you out of it, but also there's nothing really remarkable. There's not really a ton of great fight choreography. And again, going back to what you were saying about how they really just build up this threat of the newborns being so vicious and hard to fight they even double down on it because they have these training sequences and training montages of Jasper trying to teach the Cullens and some of the werewolves how to properly fight a newborn. But when you get to the actual fight, they really do go down with relative ease. There's not really any casualties. I think probably the better solution to that would maybe be have a werewolf or two die or have one of the Cullens maybe get killed. You could actually probably write that into the next movie, have a little animosity towards Bella because Victoria is coming to kill Bella, and that's like the sole reason for her raising this little vampire army, which you do kind of find out in the film. A little bit of that influence is coming from the Volturi, who are overseeing Victoria raising this army, or I guess she sort of gets Riley to do her dirty work as she's manipulating him. One kind of plot detail that didn't make sense to me is I know they say that Riley was originally from Forks, but he went missing in Seattle. So why are his parents in Forks asking the Forks local police about their missing son, when in reality that should probably be Seattle PD, right?
Yeah, well, how does Edward know him? There's a moment where I thought
he said he saw his missing posters.
Oh, maybe.
Or something of that vein.
I'm trying to remember. I thought it seemed like he was from Forks and that he knew who Riley was, but maybe not. I
thought he had just said something along the lines of, I saw his missing posters. I know who that kid is or whatnot. Maybe. But that subplot, I kind of get what they were going for with, but they don't give enough time or depth to Victoria manipulating Riley into doing all of this stuff. And one thing I want to talk about is we did talk about the recast, but I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it. Not that we get a ton of her, but I kind of liked how, I'm just going to call her Rachel Lefebvre. I kind of liked how she played Victoria as opposed to Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah.
There was something to the way that she was designed, I guess, her outfits and the look that Rachel Lefebvre had, where Victoria felt much more menacing and threatening in that first movie and a little bit in the second one, whereas Bryce Dallas Howard, in every scene in this one, she almost looks like she's unsure about what she's doing and she's not truly convinced in what she's saying. And just the looks she gives and the way that they kind of shoot her, she always just seems like she's not really playing a big part in this when you're supposed to believe that she's sort of the main antagonist of this movie. So I don't know. I didn't really buy Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, I was thinking that the whole time. I was like, okay, I'm trying to shake how I usually view Bryce Dallas Howard, which is not intimidating whatsoever.
No.
And she doesn't really lean into that kind of ever, except for like at the very end when I guess it's when they kill Riley. And she just like, and when she like darts at Edward, that's like the only time I see like any kind of like anger in her face. But like every other time there, I don't see like, but even then,
I had issue with that kind of little fight because Edward is losing to Victoria and they're able to distract her by Bella cutting her hand. And instead of, Victoria, instead of her using her vampire speed, which again, she's supposed to be very, very, very fast. Instead of doing that, she like takes a normal human step towards Bella, just enough time for Edward to take control back of the fight and defeat her. So it's not even like she goes down in a great way. Like Edward was able to take down James by himself. So am I to believe that Victoria is the strongest of? I mean, I guess she's the one that lasted the longest out of this little mini trilogy within this bigger saga, because this film really does serve to kind of sort of set up the next one, but also really kind of close out the little, like I said, trilogy, this overarching story of what got set off during the vampire baseball scene in the first movie, where, you know, all three of I saw someone in a video describe them as like an early 2000s pop punk band. The way that they're dressed and the way that they act, but them showing up and catching a whiff of Bella, which sets James on this wild hunt. But yeah, I don't know. Bryce Dallas Howard, I think she's a fine actress. Like, she's a decent actress in my opinion. Like, but this role just didn't really suit her. I guess I read that there was a scheduling conflict with Rachel Lefebvre, and that's why she wasn't in this movie. But I hate to be that guy. Maybe I didn't do enough of my research, but I don't think Rachel Lefebvre has a very storied career. Maybe whatever film she was working on or show she thought was more promising, but I feel like returning as this character probably would have been a better, not choice, but at least she would have gotten a little bit more exposure. Like, she would have been kind of the face of the movie.
She would have been
not
in the credits, too.
She would have been in the
credits.
She would have been in the credits. But yeah, I don't know. This movie, it doesn't have a lot to it, more than the last two do, but at least in the first one, you can kind of just poke fun and laugh at all of the sort of cringy interactions between all the characters and just how self-serious it takes itself. Again, going back into like the visuals, but just also the story and the writing in this, you just don't get a lot of those sort of cheeky, fun moments that you can laugh at. It's more so, it does have more of a narrative, but it's very just bland in its execution and delivery, but whether it's the filmmaking, the writing, even the performances, like while I'll say Kristen Stewart kind of acts more like she knows what she's doing in these movies, I kind of miss that Bella that was so awkward and clumsy and like just didn't know what she was saying when she was saying it, because it was just
probably because
fun.
It gave you more to laugh at.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I mean,
I'm
gonna look through my
Are we gonna
notes.
talk about the tent scene?
Is that when Jacob says, "What? I am hotter than you"?
Yeah.
Brett, go
I was
for
gonna
it,
say,
buddy.
You know, there's parts in that movie where I actually like. I don't mind Robert Pattinson in that scene. I don't think Taylor can really keep up with him. You know, I don't know if they. I don't even know if it's just how they wrote him. I don't know, but like, that's kind of like. You know, that actually wasn't a bad moment between the two. There's like a moment where they can just like talk finally,
Yeah.
which I kind of liked. And I like that Edward says, I forget the exact quote, but he kind of says like, if I didn't, I don't remember, but you know, you know what I'm saying. I probably would have liked you if, did you say if you weren't like,
no,
constantly trying to, like,
Edward
steal?
says if you weren't constantly trying to steal my girlfriend from me, I would probably like you. And then Jacob takes a moment and he's like, yeah, and if you were, and then he stops himself and says, nope, still not then. And it kind of makes Edward laugh. And I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I did actually kind of like some of the scenes with Edward and Jacob in this movie. Not so much the end scene in the forest, but there was like this kind of moment where I loved that Edward and Jacob put aside their differences and hatred towards each other because they had to come together and protect Bella. So it was this kind of moment where two characters who can come across a little bit selfish, and we kind of highlighted that already. Jacob definitely more so, but even Edward can be a little bit selfish at times. I kind of mentioned him kind of going back on his initial "I don't want to damn your soul" thing, kind of ruins that, but it was nice seeing them just put that aside and kind of come together. And you're right, that moment is kind of nice between the two, where it is just, oh, it's two dudes in a tent and they're both in love with the same woman, and they acknowledge that, and it causes a rift between them. But in another world where that wasn't a problem, they might have actually been decent buddies.
I mean, we got to remember, he went back on like why he would have turned her into a vampire, because, you know, they took it to a vote in the last movie. Can't forget that. He lost fair and square to the vote. You know, majority rules in the House. They all said that, well, majority said, yeah, change her if she wants to be changed.
Yeah.
And he gets to marry her.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's, yeah. So, you know, I'm actually, I saw there's like a subset of fans that are not team Jacob or Edward. They're team Alice, because they feel that Alice and Bella have more chemistry than she does with Jacob or Edward. And I can kind of get on that train. Fun fact, because I had mentioned in the last episode that Robert Pattinson's favorite Twilight book is New Moon, which was funny because it's the one that he's in the least. But can you guess whose favorite book in the series is Eclipse?
Carlisle.
No.
Is it Jake?
It is Jacob. Taylor Lautner's favorite is Eclipse. So again, I read these books. And Josh said he wants to read them, so maybe he can give some later feedback on whether he actually enjoyed his experience reading those or not. But yep, that's actually his favorite. I'm kind of reading here, just kind of going through some stuff for those who want to learn a little bit more about the movie. Jasper's actor, his favorite actress is Bryce Dallas Howard. So that's kind of fun. He got to meet his favorite actress. David Slade, director of the film, had stated that most of Nikki Reed, who plays Rosalie, her fight scenes in the climax were left out because the dailies came back from the lab and they were underexposed. Which brings me to something that I had brought up before we started recording this. Would you believe me if I told you that every single movie in this franchise was shot on film and not digital?
No.
It was.
Really?
Every single film in this franchise, despite their varying changes in style and aesthetic, they were all shot on 35 millimeter film.
Did you just find that out?
No, I knew that.
Oh, okay. Because I thought you said something about Breaking Dawn, like part 1.
I said the color grading, like
I
and that's the thing.
I thought you said how like it looks like overly like digital or something like
that. It does, and that's why it's really confusing when you find out. Even I will say, like, I'm usually pretty good at noticing when movies are shot on film as opposed to digital, even if it's like a higher grade film like 35 or 70. But when watching, especially Eclipse, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2, I had to like recheck my facts and be like, really? Because none of this looked like it was shot on film. I guess you could maybe say that some of the colors, even when they sort of bring back that color grade, there is some kind of richness to some of the colors, whether it's like the costume or the production design, that you just wouldn't get in a digital film, even if you tried to use like a film overlay. But yeah, speaking of some other facts, Tom Felton, who plays Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter series, and Channing Tatum were both considered to play the role of Riley. Instead, it went to an actor whose name I do not know. So
that's crazy. I wonder how he won.
Yeah, okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. Rachel Lefebvre was fired by Summit Entertainment for this movie because her filming schedule overlapped with that of her other film, Barney's Version, which came out in two.
I mean, that's better.
Yeah, it has a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which is higher than all of the Twilight movies.
I started watching that a long time ago and I never finished it. But Paul Giamatti, right?
Not sure.
Not sure.
I already clicked off of it. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to bring something up, and it's kind of my last question for you. Did you think that the werewolves in this movie looked a little bit worse than they did in New Moon?
Honestly, I didn't really notice. I didn't.
I don't know why. Maybe it was because of the change in like the saturation and the color palette used, and obviously you're bringing in a different director, cinematographer, and I assume colorist. But yeah, I don't know. When I was watching it, for some reason I didn't have any issues in New Moon with how the werewolves looked, and maybe that's because they were used more sparingly in the film. But in this one, you definitely see a lot more of them. They're way more prominent in the story. We didn't really mention it too, but you do get a couple of new characters in the film, such as Seth and Leia? Is it Lee?
I thought it was Leah. I thought it was just Leah.
Seth and Leah Clearwater, who in the last movie, their father passed away from a heart attack when Victoria was kind of hunting him down. So that's their son. And their mother actually starts to date Charlie. I'm not sure if that's in this one or the next one. But yeah, so they have they're like the newcomers. Seth is quite young. He's 15. Leah is a little bit older. And you also kind of find out that she and Sam, who is the leader of the wolf pack, they sort of had a relationship, but then he imprinted on his wife, which kind of broke off anything that him and Leia might have had together. But yeah, so that really kind of covers my thoughts on Twilight Eclipse. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to get across, or shall we move on?
Quick one that just annoyed me. After Jake forces the kiss on her, I mean, I imagine Bella would just be furious with him from here on out. But I think the next time she sees him at the party, when he comes in, she is like all smiley and giggly at him, and it just doesn't make sense for her as a character.
Well, no, she's mad at first, and then he apologizes.
Yeah, no, that's not enough. And like he says, he tells her, "I won't stop fighting for your love, even if you don't think you won it now." And he makes her like this gift, this like bracelet, And she wears it. I just don't buy that. I don't buy that she would wear that. Like, it's clearly a gesture of him trying to win her over. Like, why are you being fooled so easily? Why are you glazing over this guy still? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, just irritated me, but
fair
that's my
enough.
final note.
I just had one more trivia fact that I thought was kind of funny. So apparently, do you know the scene where Jacob's father is telling the story of like the werewolves and vampires? It's around like a campfire.
Yeah.
Apparently, in that flashback, the vampire character, the third mother, I believe she's referenced as, was originally supposed to be played by Kristen Stewart, and they filmed the scene. They actually filmed it, but apparently Stephanie Meyer, and I think either the producer or director of the film, felt that it was too unintentionally comedic, because these films have been so concerned with that up to this point. So I thought that was kind of a funny little fact that adds to the lore of these movies. But yeah, so if we're done with Twilight Eclipse, I say we take a short commercial break and then we come back and we pun not intended, but we break into Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2.
So we'll try to lump them together a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I'll go over like the different budgets and box offices, but yeah, other than that, we'll kind of talk about them as one unit. But other than that, guys, catch us. We'll be back in just one moment after a brief commercial break. Thank you guys for your patience as we get back from a commercial break. We just got done wrapping up talking about Twilight Eclipse, the third film in the 5-film saga, and we are now moving on to Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2. There's only 4 novels, but they went the Harry Potter route. They split it into 2 different parts, each sort of around 2 hours. I think the first one, Part 1, is a little bit under 2, and I think the Part 2 version is a little bit over 2, but it's all with credits. So they're right around 2 hours each. And as I mentioned, the book itself is not really that big, and I'm sure, it's been a while since I've read it, I'm sure there was a lot of stuff you probably could have cut. But we are moving on, like I said, to Breaking Dawn, and we're going to talk about these movies, I guess, both individually and collectively, since they are, 2 parts of the same story. But I do want to talk about some of my issues with that sort of format. But let's start off with Breaking Dawn Part 1 was released in 2011. It is directed by Bill Condon, a budget of $127 million, and made $712.2 million at the box office. Part 2 released 1 year later in 2012 and was made for a budget of around $136 million, and they made $846 million at the global box office. So
That's
pretty good
insane.
return. Pretty good return on investment. Whether it was genuine ticket sales or people watching because they hate themselves or sort of ironically. And to that notion, I wanted to bring up something funny that my roommate Brian had said when I was watching Twilight Part 1 the other day, and he kind of walked in while I was watching it, and he asked me the question, why do you do this to yourself? Why do you watch these movies? And especially while watching Breaking Dawn Part 1, I kind of felt that way. But before we really unpack it, let's set the stage for Breaking Dawn Part 1, which kicks off with Bella and Edward's wedding ceremony. And from there, after the wedding ceremony, they go on their little honeymoon. They have some sexy time.
Little.
Okay, well, all right, it's just the synopsis. Just the synopsis, don't worry. They go on a really grand, expensive honeymoon to an island that Carlisle gifted to Esme, called Isle Esme, or Island Esme, I forget. But they have some sexy time because Bella wants to have a little bit of that, vampire dick before she becomes a vampire. She wants to get the experience as a human and lose her virginity while she's still a human. And
risk her life.
And risk her life.
Yeah.
But again, she's very carefree with the whole life thing. Then after they have some sexy time, it's quickly brought to the audience's attention that Bella is now pregnant, which Edward and even Carlisle thought was not a possibility, as vampires aren't supposed to be able to get people pregnant. And then basically the rest of the movie is Bella slowly dying as the baby grows inside her stomach at super rapid rates. And that's really Breaking Dawn Part 1. So unless I left any vital details out, we can kind of get into that movie. And it'll probably bleed into part 2. No real reason to do another just break in between, and we'll just kind of flow right into it. But holy shit, was this movie fucking boring.
Yeah, so let's just like this series has just been the definition of a roller coaster. Like, not that any of them are good, but really just like entertainment, and then
Yes.
it dips, and then it goes back up, and then it dips, and then it goes back up. This movie felt very similar to me, like New Moon, where just like a whole lot of nothing happens.
Literally nothing happens.
We spend I should have went back and actually clocked it, but the wedding's pretty long. That's
So long.
That is a drawn out section, and then the honeymoon is even longer, and I'm like, half this movie is until they leave the honeymoon, at least half, maybe a little less, but half the movie. But yeah, first off, Carlisle is loaded. I mean, I get as a doctor, but my
Loaded.
God, it just gives them an island, But yeah, So we're at the wedding, and I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much all that happens, and then she gets pregnant. I don't even know where to begin. Like, the wedding. Let's see. Jacob crashes it. Well, he doesn't crash it. Like, he was invited, but like he comes late, right? And that's when they have their like little discussion of like her. I'm trying to remember how it exactly went down, but I remember he gets like real pissed off because she says that she's gonna wait to change. They're gonna go on their honeymoon, and then he gets all worried because apparently it's very easy for a vampire to kill someone because of how strong they are. So like having sex is like
they fuck so hard that they can kill you.
I wonder how they kill them. Is it just too intense of penetration? I don't.
Brute dick force is all I can think of.
But apparently everybody knows about it. Everyone knows about it. Everyone knows about the sex death from a vampire.
Yeah, the sex death. Jesus Christ. Yeah, and what I love too is, like you said, Jacob doesn't necessarily crash it because he is invited. Actually, the film opens up with him getting the wedding invitation and him storming off into the rain like he's a 16-year-old emo girl. But he does show up to the wedding late, and at first things are kind of fine, and they're having a fine conversation, and then they start dancing, and Jacob,
which I don't like. I don't like how they're dancing. I don't like it. It seems that whole like leaning your head on them when you're dancing, it just seems very intimate. I don't get why do that with Jacob on your wedding day.
I don't really particularly know, but like you said, things go kind of awry when I think it's something along the lines of, he says like, it's not like you guys can have a real honeymoon anyway, to which Bella says, as real as anybody else's. And he's like, well, you can't mean. And then he like gets the hint that they're gonna fuck on their honeymoon like normal people, and that's when he like loses his composure and starts freaking out. And that's when like he says some fucked up shit to Bella, and I didn't write it all down, but it's so insane the things that he says to her on her wedding day, and his just reaction and the way that he carried himself in that whole conversation. Like, he shows up and she's happy. She's really genuinely happy to see him. Like, she does really care for him. And I know, like, we kind of poked fun at the whole love triangle thing, but she does really care for Jacob and has a very intense, I guess, friendship feelings towards him, but she really does care for him and love him in that sort of sense. And so she's so happy when he arrives. And then he does, and then he finds out that she's gonna get boned on her wedding night, and then he turns into like an angry child and like throws a temper tantrum, and Edward has to come over, and Jacob starts freaking out. He's like, "You're gonna kill her," and Edward's just like, "Just get the fuck out of here, dude." And like he just completely ruins. Bella's having such a wonderful, lovely wedding. Like, it's such a gorgeous wedding that they're able to throw together. If Alice is, her visions may suck, and she's not a very good fortune teller, but she's a really good decorator. They throw out this beautiful wedding for them, and you get like this soft piano, and Bella sort of has a little nightmare where she sees everybody dead, and that's a little weird. But yeah, the wedding takes so long. It's so drawn out. One thing that I do think is a little funny, and we already mentioned that she gets pregnant from Edward, but they show, and this is the last time you ever see these characters, but you see her high school buddies, Mike, Eric, Jessica, and Angela. They're at the wedding. They got the invite, And Jessica, Anna Kendrick's character, she makes a comment like, "Oh, do you think she's already showing?" And Angela's like, "Just because they get married doesn't mean that she's pregnant." And then Jessica's like, "Yeah, okay." And at the time, it's like, "Oh, Jessica's just being kind of bitchy." But it's so funny that immediately after the wedding on the honeymoon, Bella does get pregnant.
Yeah.
So she calls it.
You just reminded me something like I was just like so taken out of at the wedding is when they're all giving their speeches. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Isn't it just like the maid of honor and best man and I guess like the parents, but like everyone's up there speaking. Everyone's taking turns speaking. They're weird speeches. Jessica gives that weird like I forget what she says.
Oh, she makes fun. She's like, "Oh, nobody was good enough for Edward until Bella came along," which is crazy because she's not the. What does she say? She's not the valedictorian. She's not the captain of the volleyball team. Something along.
And
the
it was
lines
and
of
it was
that.
everything that she was, right?
Yeah. Wait, does this mean I don't get to make a speech at your wedding?
After watching Breaking Dawn, I just realized they can. I think they could just get a little lengthy.
I'll keep it short. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, so she's just like alluding to like she wanted Edward, but she couldn't get her, and why is he with her? It was just weird. It was out of place for me, and just like the amount of people that are speaking.
Oh my god, it's so funny, and I think it's like I was expecting because Bella's mother, she starts singing a song. Like actually, she doesn't start. When it cuts to her giving her speech, it's just her singing. And I thought Bella, it was going to cut to her and her being like, "Oh, this is like cringe. Like, Mom, why are you doing this?" But like Bella's like laughing and having a good time with it and not
She's
finding
eating
it
it
to
up.
be cringe. She loves it. I love Charlie's speech though, where he's like, "I know Edward's going to be a good husband because I'm a cop and I know how to use a gun." And he's like, again, fuck you. I love Charlie. Every scene Charlie's in, he just makes it better. It's every time he's
I don't
on
hate
screen, 'cause
Charlie.
again, he's the only normal person.
I definitely don't hate Charlie. I hate Charlie's agenda with Jacob, and there definitely is one. I don't like it.
He kind of he's mad at Edward because Edward ditched Bella and put her into like the craziest of depressions, and
he's mad at Edward because he had to deal with those fucking night terrors. That's why.
Those insane night terrors where she screamed like a wild banshee. Go watch our last episode, guys, if you want to see us rave about those sequences. I kind of love at the beginning of the movie, though, there's like this fun little synth pop in the background. And I say that ironically because it's again, like if you go from like the music selection and the compositional themes in the first film and then you watch this movie, it'll honestly give you whiplash because it's so jarring. And what you were talking about when I was bringing up kind of the look and color of this movie is ever since I saw it the first time as like a youngster, even before I knew what like color correction was or how different lenses and that sort of stuff can affect the way a film looks. So very early on, probably when the movie came out, I had always thought that this movie looked like reality TV because it's so glossy and like pristine in the way that everything just looks so clean. Which is crazy again because it's supposedly shot on 35 millimeter film, but everything does look so digital and like I don't know what they did or how they shot it or how the post-production process went, but everything in this movie, even from the like when you, and again it's not that big of a highlight, but when you see sort of establishing shots in the first movie, whether it's like the swooping shots of the mountains near Forks, Washington, you can tell, oh, this was like a Twilight shot. This is from Twilight. When you see, because again, they go to this incredible looking island that Carlisle gifted to Esme as a wedding gift. When you get those sort of scenes and it's them doing all this like honeymoon stuff, they like have like these little honeymoon adventures and whatnot. And most of the honeymoon adventure sequence scenes are just really Bella trying to seduce Edward into giving her more dick. Like literally there's like a 20-minute sequence of her just trying to get more pipe, which is so funny, but also incredibly stupid and boring. But when you see this movie and you see those sort of same establishing shots, whether it's the mountains or again, when they go to, I don't know where they go. Is it Costa Rica or like near Costa Rica or something of that sorts? You get these establishing shots and they literally look like stock footage that you would see in like a nature documentary. Like they just look so non-personable and again, like manufactured by like a factory. It was. I
I wanted
hated
to
it.
ask you, because something I noticed in this movie, it was very quick. But how long would you say an establishing shot should be?
I don't know, 3 to 5 seconds max.
3 to 5 seconds. Okay. So when, wait, hold on. This might be. Never mind. I'm gonna wait. Till. Oh wait, I don't have to. It's when they.
Yeah.
It's in part 2, when they gift them an entire house. Somehow in a 2-week span, they give them a house. They build a house. They furnish it. They decorate it. It is like all done up. I don't know how
It
they
is
did that.
luxurious as fuck.
They had a week. They had like
what's-
maybe a month. How does it? I don't know. But
You know what's even funnier about that is when they gift them the house. I think it's literally a scene or two later where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have to tell Charlie that you died," which like leads me to believe they're not gonna stay in Forks, Washington for that much longer. So to build them, and again from the outside, it looks like a nice little kind of hut, and then you get inside. It's like that scene in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire when it just looks like a normal tent, and then they go in and it's
Yeah.
like the biggest tent you've seen
Yeah.
with like all of this furniture and whatnot. It's so much like that. And again, Alice is just such a good decorator and interior designer because the house looks incredible from the inside.
I
It
don't
is
know how she
so
did it.
Astonishing.
But in the second one, there was one establishing shot. There's a couple of that house when they do like the house scene. I kid you not. I have to watch it again. I'm pretty sure it was like half a second. They like cut to the house and then they cut to inside the house, and I was like,
Oh, geez.
wow. I was like, wow, that
I
was
guess
fast.
I guess that slipped by me. I mean, this film is, and it's funny, guys, because before this, we recorded one of our bonus episodes of a film where we said, like, it demands your attention. These movies don't demand your attention, especially part 1, because it may sound like when I was describing the plot, kind of how I described the plot of especially the first 2 Twilight movies. And like Josh said, it goes so up and down in terms of, like, entertainment value and, like, what's driving the narrative. But when I was describing those, there are some things that kind of happen in between and underneath. Like, they're not great and they really don't add much to the plot, but some things happen. You get vampire baseball, you get scenes of Edward, saving the day and saving Bella from getting attacked in an alleyway. But on top of that, you just have some things just happening. In part 1 specifically of this, because I have less criticisms with part 2, and there's some stuff I do like in that movie, but in this one, genuinely, nothing happens. They get married, which takes like 45 fucking minutes, close to an hour. They go on a honeymoon, and then Bella gets pregnant, and then the rest of the movie is just her like slowly dying. And it's so boring, and not in like I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but like New Moon is boring, but there's some funny cringy shit in New Moon. There's not even that much cringy stuff in this. Like, we highlighted a little bit with like the speeches, but there's nothing even that unintentionally funny. It's just so boring and such a slog of a movie.
I was saying to you, and I know you disagreed with it. I was like, but I feel like they're kind of like they're a little bit better in this, at least.
No.
You don't think so?
Better in terms of what?
No, just I think acting overall is just
No.
a little better. You don't really?
I don't think so. And it's not, again, plenty of talented actors in these movies.
I can point out a lot more cringy scenes and like really bad acting. This one, as bland as it feels, I at least don't get those moments of like bad acting as I feel like in New Moon.
You get him with Taylor Lautner in a lot of the scenes
You'll
that
always
he's in.
but that's why New Moon is all him, and that's what I really think hurts it. Is it's so boring, but it's like I don't know. It's weird because New Moon feels like poorly written in terms of like its dialogue. It doesn't feel like there is much dialogue in this to where it's like noticeable bad. It's like more it's poorly written in terms of like a script,
Yeah,
So-
I don't. It's tough because it's like we're trying to argue like a piece of shit, like a piece of dog shit versus
My
a piece of
shit
cat-
versus your shit. Yeah.
My shit versus your shit, dog shit, cat shit. It's all shit. But I guess with the first one, it was like, again, it is more so on the side of entertainment value. But again, I would just much rather prefer that kind of cringy, weirdly uncomfortable dialogue and like how it's delivered and directed in those scenes, as opposed to this movie, where it's so stale and prosthetic feeling and just fake all around. Where
You know
again,
what?
I feel like I'm watching a fucking nature documentary during some scenes, and then in others I feel like I'm watching like bad reality TV.
Yeah, but they play chess in this one.
Yeah, and again, while she's playing chess, she's just trying to get dick. She is really just trying to get dick down.
I think he's tanner. I think he's tanner than her on that honeymoon.
Yeah. And again, they're on a honeymoon in the fucking sun, and he doesn't sparkle.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that.
These films don't even follow their own fucking plot and logic and lore that they established. Not even like, oh, like this is the backstory in exposition. Like literally they show us that if Edward gets the littlest amount of sunlight on him, to the point in, I think it's Twilight Eclipse, the last film, where he goes on vacation with Bella to go visit her mother in Jacksonville, and he literally stays inside while her and her mother are conversing outside in the sun. It's so, I don't understand why they couldn't. And I had read somewhere, this is unconfirmed, but I was just kind of looking into, because I was watching it, I was like, wait a minute, why the fuck isn't he sparkling? So I kind of looked it up, and I guess, and again, another attribute as to why they maybe look like vampires the least in this movie than they do in the previous ones. Like when we see Bella in the first movie, she's super pale and the vampires are pale. And, you know, some of the characters are pale. And again, that goes back to the color correction and them just putting a grade over it and not like adjusting the levels and whatnot. But at least the vampires looked like vampires. Like you said, he is tanner than she is in this one. And I had read that the director of this movie apparently didn't really want to make a fantasy movie. And that's why you get way less elements of like the vampires and werewolves, and most of it is just the romance. I guess he mainly just wanted to make a romance movie, so that's why a lot of the attributes that we saw with like vampires and werewolves, they're not as prominent in this movie. But you know what my fucking question is? If you don't want to make a fantasy movie, why the fuck are you making a fantasy movie? You know what? John Carpenter didn't want to make Halloween. He wanted to make a Western. You know what? Halloween is still fucking great because he understood the fucking assignment. Wes Craven just wanted to make romance movies and a good love story. And you know what? He still fucking delivered with Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream. So I don't understand why, even if it's something you're not particularly fond of doing, A, either don't take the assignment, or B, don't take the job, or take the job and actually
especially when it's
make a movie that's supposed to be what it's supposed to be.
When it's the fourth movie in a series and they've already done fantasy.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know why someone like that is hired, but.
And it makes it even more confusing because Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 is not even a fucking fantasy movie at that point. It goes full-blown superhero comic book level of goofiness in terms of some of the shit that they pull off in that movie. So then I'm even more confused because, again, this film and the next one are both directed by Bill Condon. He's the only director to return for a second film in this movie, obviously Part 1 and Part 2. But, again, why are you taking a job that's like me accepting a job to direct a Chronicles of Narnia movie and being like, you know what, I actually want to make a fucking horror movie, so we're not going to delve into the fantasy at all. It's just going to be spooky shit. It makes absolutely no fucking sense. And with the budget that this movie had, I expect so much more.
Let me try to play devil's advocate here.
Try it.
When she's pregnant and dying, I can sort of say there is at least some like tension I feel that they're trying to achieve, and a little bit of drama between the two, like the conflict of. Now I will say this, it doesn't make sense to me why Bella, she's like already so attached, where it's like she's already like saying, no, I'm ready to die for this baby that could be dangerous to you guys. She's like don't perform the abortion, whatever. And Edward, I like the Edward's involvement with it, of like him saying, do you really think I could love this thing after
I do not.
No,
because it really just does not paint Edward in a good light. And I understand it's a fictional movie,
but
and it's a fantasy story, but
this is also. I get that. Before I sound like a horrible human being, as if I would say the same thing, this is they're unsure what this baby is. Like, it seems like it is like
because it's killing her.
Right. It seems like it's almost like kind of like demonic, I guess.
It's I think at one point they say that it literally is like breaking all the bones inside of her body and won't allow her to accept nourishment.
I think the knowledge is that it's not good. It's like an evil being that she wants to give birth to. That's what I don't get. Like, after knowing that, she's like, no, I have to give birth to this. I don't care if I die. Bella, they're telling you it could be like an evil being inside of you. So to that point is where I kind of like I understand where Edward's coming from. He's like, you're telling me to choose this thing that we're not sure what it is over you, and I don't know. But like, those scenes I don't think are poorly acted. That's what I'm saying. Is like, I don't think you.
And again, I don't think the scenes in Twilight Part 1 are, again, we talked about it a lot in that episode, but I think it's more of a direction problem than it is a screenwriting problem. Oh, New Moon.
Oh yeah, because that's where I think the acting is like, well, the acting is the cringiest in one, but the acting is like bad and nothing in the second one. So it's like bland and nothing. That's where I think it's like the biggest problem. Whereas that's why I'm trying to compare like this to New Moon, because
I guess this does, like you said, it has more normal dialogue. So like when you have good actors like Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson, it does work. And because again, it's highlighted more with like Taylor Lautner still not being good in this movie.
Yeah.
So I guess they gave them just more normal sounding dialogue. Then it's still not, like you said, it's still not well written, but it's at least a little bit more normal and less like awkward and uncomfortable than in like the previous movies. So
right.
I see that kind of point.
I will say,
well, thank God. I just want to say thank God. Spoiler alert, guys, if you don't want to know the sex of the baby, thank God it wasn't a baby boy, because Bella had planned on naming the baby Edward Jacob. So.
Well, do you like the other name more?
No.
How do you like Renesmee?
It sounds good on the surface. Like if someone came to me and like, my baby's name is Renesmee, and not having seen Twilight, I'd be like, oh, that's kind of a unique name. It kind of sounds kind of nice. It has a nice ring to it. It's just after you find out that the reason she names it Renesmee is because she takes Renee, her actual mother's name, and Esme, who is Carlisle's wife and Edward's like adoptive vampire mother. When you find out that Renesmee is just Renee and Esme put together, it becomes really, really, really stupid.
I'll be honest, I'm Team Jacob here, because Jacob hates the fucking name, but he's trying to like be sensitive and say like,
is it any better than the fucking nickname he gives her?
Oh, the Loch Ness Monster.
That's my favorite Kristen Stewart moment in these movies. And again, we're kind of bleeding into the second one, but I mean, spoiler alert for the ending. So Edward and everyone else involved, they're kind of thinking that Bella's gonna die, and when she's giving birth and whatnot, and the only one that's actually team baby other than Bella is Rosalie, who she makes her case known, and it's the first time you kind of see her smile in these movies, other than in the last one when she's talking about killing her husband and all of his friends. Rightfully so, they deserve to die for sure. But yeah, so you think Bella is dead, and then they try to turn her last minute, and it is successful. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the film kind of ends with a shot on her eyes, and she's got vampire eyes now, and kind of bleeds right into the next movie, where now the baby is alive, it's well, it's happy, it's healthy, and also growing at extremely, extremely rapid rates. But before we talk about that, one thing that happens in this movie that we didn't really get into is that because I don't know if we've mentioned it, but werewolves can hear each other's thoughts. And if you guys remember my opening quote of the episode, that's where this kind of comes into play. Because again, werewolves, when they're in werewolf form, they can hear each other's thoughts. In this, they're sort of telepathic, telekinetic, and whatnot, and it's part of that whole pack mentality thing. And once the werewolves find out that Bella is pregnant with what is referred to as an immortal child, again, Josh said you're led to believe from all their research. Edward kind of pulls a Bella in the first Twilight and does a Google search and looks up information on immortal children and that sort of thing, to which, again, like Josh said, it's all portrayed in a very demonic sense. And then when all of the werewolves read Jacob's mind, they know that there's an immortal child in play, and they call it a monster, and now they feel like the Cullens have broken the treaty that they have imposed, and they want to kill Bella and get rid of the baby. Jacob does not want to do this. Jacob wants to protect Bella and the baby, so he separates from the pack, to which he gets a little bit of help as Seth and Leia, again, the Clearwaters, they join him, and then you find out that once you separate from the pack, then you stop hearing their thoughts. And Seth just kind of wants to do the right thing. That's his mentality, and he's always kind of perky and upbeat. And Leia, ultimately, she just wants to get away from Sam because she doesn't want to be that sad, pathetic, lonely girl in the pack who the leader doesn't look at. But before Jacob goes off on his own, he stands up to Sam when they're all in wolf form and they have a wolf standoff. And at first, Sam is like, I'm the leader of the pack. And he makes Jacob back down. And then Jacob stands up, and that's when he delivers that absolutely epic monologue of him saying that he is the son of a chief. He was not born to follow, he was born to lead. And while the music and the tone of Jacob's character, Taylor Lautner's character, may convince you that it's a really epic, badass moment, it is one of the goofiest, silliest fucking things in any of these 5 movies.
It might
partially
be
because of the way that the audio is edited,
Yeah.
but my God, is it
This
abysmal.
might be the worst scene in the whole series for me. I can't even, like, I was so confused with, like, I don't even know, like, if it was like, yeah, it was the audio issues, but like the sound was so loud. Everything just, like, it never stopped getting like intense. So it was just like stressing me out, but not in a good way. And I was like, can this end? This is like pissing me off now. It's like, it just kept like going.
The worst part too is there's this weird vocal effect that they put over the actor's voice when they're dubbing it into the CGI scene, and for some reason this vocal effect just makes them sound like they're speaking from inside like a shower, or they're like inside water, and it like muddies the audio up, and it sounds like you're recording something like from a very far distance, and from like it's almost like they recorded that dialogue with like a DSLR camera's audio, where it doesn't sound like it's from a professional mic. It doesn't sound like it's in a movie that cost over $130 million to make. It sounds like something that you would get in again, we have experience with this, but like in a freshman film school class when you're all presenting your projects. Like that level of poor audio quality, on top of the scene just being absolutely fucking ridiculous. And
it was
I
so
get what they were trying to
silly.
go for, but
it was so silly. And like once it calmed down, once it ended, like Lauren and I were just sitting there, and she was just like, shit. Like that was like so long and like so like loud, and just, I don't know. It like never stopped peaking in terms of like volume, like delivery. It was like, I don't know. It was honestly very exhausting to watch that scene.
Yeah. So Jacob, Seth, and Leah, they go their own way. They go to protect Bella and the Cullens and whatnot, as the other pack members are planning again on killing Bella and killing the immortal child once born. And in one of the final scenes, when Jacob thinks that Bella has died, he plans on killing the newborn baby. So he takes the baby, and he looks into the baby's eyes.
No, he doesn't take the baby. He like walks in the living room behind Rosalie, who's like holding it.
Correct. But he looks into the baby's eyes when he sees the baby, and he imprints, as the films and books like to say, on a baby. Now, they bring this up in Breaking Dawn Part 1, because this is all in, this is the end of the movie, but they bring this up earlier in the film after Bella and Edward have come back from their honeymoon, and they're learning all this new information. And this is where we find out about imprinting, in which a werewolf, again, imprints on a person, and from then on out, they are either a friend, a mentor, and potentially a lover. And at first you're like, oh, it's kind of like love at first sight in a sense. And you, like I mentioned, Sam, the leader of the pack, was with Leia and then imprinted on his now wife. I think her name's Emily, I believe.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And then Leia says something along the lines of, I would love to imprint on somebody, I that sort of thing. And then she says, if you imprinted on someone, it could finally, get you over Bella. And they're kind of hyping imprinting up as this good thing, this freeing thing to where you finally know what you want in life. And then they pan over and you see one of the werewolf boys has imprinted on what appears to be a child younger than the age of 5. And you find out that you can imprint on children. And this is what Jacob does to Bella and Edward's newborn baby, Renesmee. He imprints on her. And they really,
Now, let me just defend Jacob. It is not Jacob's fault. It is the fucking writer's fault. Just don't do that.
It is the most absurd, disgustingly gross thing, I think,
so
in
I was
any
late
blockbuster.
I was late to the party here. I thought at the end of the film, when he looks into her eyes, he like gets all these flashes of Bella, right? And Bella as like a child, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was literally Bella. I thought he just saw Bella's eyes through her babies. And I guess I thought you could imprint like indirectly. So I thought he imprinted on Bella. No, I don't know how much sense that makes. I think it's a lot better than imprinting on the baby. And then you even have more of a conflict of like, Bella, the love triangle. But this whole time we realize he was drawn to Bella because of her not yet born child. So as we started part 2, I was like just told that Lauren was like clarifying things with me. I was like, wait, what? And I was flipping out playfully. I was flipping out. I wasn't actually like mad, but I was kind of mad. And I was just like, that's disgusting.
So.
Why would they put that in there? And she's like, now she was trying to like defend the movie. She's always trying to like, tame me, settle me down a little bit. She's like trying to say, well, listen, it doesn't like imprinting isn't always love. It's sometimes like a brotherhood, or it's like a mentor kind of thing, and that's what it is here. And I'm like, I don't buy it. I don't think so. And
that's called grooming.
Yeah. Well, no, she was like, I think it could be like he's never romantic with her, even when they get older. Like it could just be like a protector. I'm like, listen, whatever. Fine, but can I fast forward?
Please be my guest.
All of that. Now, let me just say, I didn't find this out until we were watching the last one, when I kept pausing it and I kept like giving my feedback, and I was like asking Lauren questions. She was like, Josh, I didn't see this movie. And I was like, wait, what? And she was like, yeah, I only saw the first 3. I never saw part 1 or part 2. I just saw scenes from it. I was like, oh, so this is new to all of us. So this was her first watch too, but she knows a lot of like Twilight lore, I guess. So she knew like enough to explain it. So I think she knew the end though. So when the end happened, I just looked at her. I was just giving her like a dirty look. I was like, so everything you just told me doesn't matter, because that was the goal. It was to wait until she's 18, because I see a flashback of him and her at the beach, and like that, like you just ruined. You could have had me going as a protector if you just never made it anything intimate. If you just had it be platonic, be someone that watches over someone to protect them. Fine, but you didn't. This was a grooming situation, and it is so fucking weird. I don't know how. Did people have a problem with this when it came out?
If they didn't, they should have, because again,
it's disgusting.
It's disgusting. It's gross.
And he's like, oh my god, at the end when he just like looks at Edward and says, so should I start calling you dad? And I was like, oh, this fucking guy. Are you kidding me? This is not funny.
You're 100% in the right, where at first when you're like, oh, maybe it's just a protection role.
Yeah.
But the issue is you already have the reason there's no reason to defend it right even from the get-go, even before seeing some of the shit they put in later, is you know that imprinting at the very least has the potential for romance.
Yeah.
It doesn't just mean protector, because you know through the previous films that Sam imprinted on Emily, which ended his relationship with Leia. So, and then again, the film doubles down, and Jacob himself is like, it all makes sense now. You know, it wasn't you. It was never you. And then later in the film, towards the end, even before I think he says that, is I believe Alice has a vision of the future where she sees Jacob and a grown-up Renesmee together on the beach with Edward and Bella. And everyone's just happy-go-lucky. And I understand the concept of it's not his fault. Again, it is Stephenie Meyer's fault for writing this horrible, horrible inclusion into these films.
It doesn't make sense, though, in terms of, like, Edward and Bella. They were fucking pissed, which I was like, oh, good. We're finally getting to some realistic, like, you know, reactions here.
Edward's not pissed at all, right?
Well,
Bella
pissed.
is.
Yeah. Well, Edward is, like, being, like, reserved about it, but they said, I'm surprised Edward hasn't, like, you know, done this to you. And he said, still thinking about it. But he says it as, like, a joke. So I guess he's not that serious about it.
He really should probably. I
mean,
I know
Bella's
it's not his
furious.
Fault,
she's so mad. And she's like, oh, and this is what pissed me off about Jacob. She's like, stay away from my daughter. And he's like, you know, I can't do that. I don't give a shit what code you have with the wolves. You've broken that code before. You can fucking, like... Yeah, and it's like I don't know how far this goes. Will he just follow them if they move across the country? Is he just gonna follow them? And I don't know. It's
we've been talking about this shit with the baby. How did you feel about the CGI baby?
Jesus Lord, I didn't know that was a thing, and I was like, why is this? Why is it? Because they're trying to just give her the same face as the girl actress from Interstellar? Like, are they trying to just like, because she's too small, I guess, to be that actress, right? You couldn't just get a little girl and just have her, like, just get a couple different actresses.
Well, when she's a little girl, she's real, but the baby is CGI. But they CGI over her eyes.
Oh yeah, that's what. No, I was like, but they stopped doing that. They didn't do that at like the last like quarter of the movie, when it was like, what's that girl's name from Interstellar? I forget her name. I think that's her. But her,
I know who
she's like, she's like fully real. There's no CGI anymore at the end, I don't think. But when
they kind of lose the whole CGI eyes angle. I mean, actually, no. I think towards the end, like I think throughout the entire film, her eyes are fully CGI.
But
when
sure?
she's a baby, she's fully CGI.
No, her face. But then when she's like sitting in the car, I think it's just like her eyes. I'm like, she still looks fucking weird. Why are they doing this? But no, when she's like at the end, we're riding on Jacob. I think that's just her face. I don't think her eyes are CGI.
Her eyes still look a little off to me, but I guess I'd have to rewatch it with more of a critical
I don't know,
eye for
but
that.
like, okay, if she did have CGI eyes at the end, why?
I had read that they did the whole baby thing at least to make her look like otherworldly, like this like unreal baby, and I guess they achieved that. But it was kind of a funny sort of behind the scenes fact that I guess they originally had a doll that they were using on set, and I don't know what the plans were, whether they were going to CGI over the doll or not. But I guess the doll that they had gotten was so awkward and clumsy and kind of freakish looking that they began, the cast and crew started calling the doll Chuck Esme, like Chucky and Renesmee. So I thought that was kind of which I was talking to my sister about these movies the other day. Somehow she even knows that fact about it. So I don't know how she knew that, but so I guess going more into the plot of this movie, the issue is when we kind of come to learn that Renesmee is growing like she did inside of Bella at a really rapid rate. You kind of get like a little fading transition of her just growing rapidly in height and becoming more and more of a developed child as it progresses. So it's clear she's growing at an extremely rapid rate, and they kind of tell Charlie this. They write it off by saying that like they adopted her, and she's like, but even then he has like one reaction to being like, you grew like 2 feet since the last time I saw you. And then they never really address that again. But they also kind of try to write that off a little bit by when they plan on telling that when they plan on telling Charlie that Bella has quote unquote died because they plan on changing her, Jacob doesn't want this, so he goes to Charlie in the woods and starts stripping down naked. To which again, Charlie has an amazing reaction to. But
yeah, why does he do that this time? Every other time he just took off his shirt, but now he's like, he's going balls out.
Well, he didn't. He probably. They looked like kind of nice shorts. I don't know if he wanted to rip them this time. But no, yeah, he changes into his werewolf form in front of Charlie to kind of wake him up. And Bella, basically, she doesn't tell Charlie anything. She just tells him that she's happy, and that he should just be fine with that. And what is really going on, he doesn't need to know. He's on a need-to-know basis, and this, he does not need to know. I don't know how in his head he justifies or kind of comes to terms with his quote-unquote adopted granddaughter, that she is growing at alarming rates, but they're playing in the snow one of these nice winter days in Forks, Washington, and Jacob and Bella have taken Renesmee out, and they're playing in this snowy field, and Renesmee is kind of flying a little bit or jumping really high and suspending herself in air for long periods of time, and she's catching snowflakes. And a character who we met in previous films, she was apparently in a relationship with Laurent, and so she's mad at the werewolves for killing Laurent. Which
she almost ruined the wedding in part 1 because she saw one of the
yeah. It's her name is Irina, I believe, and she's played by Maggie Grace, who is Liam Neeson's daughter in Taken. She's the one who gets taken, but yeah, in this, so we see her from a distance, and she sees Renesmee doing this thing, and so in her mind, it's this immortal child, and an immortal child is what happens when a normal child is turned into a vampire. And apparently because they're children and they don't have as much consciousness, they don't have an ability to control their hunger or thirst. And we see a flashback of a village being destroyed by what appears to be a very small vampire child. In which you come to find out that Irina and her sisters, their mother is the one who changed this child into a vampire, and because of it, it is seen as a crime in the vampire world, and the Volturi, right in front of Irina and all of her sisters, kills their mother. And it's because she changed a child into a vampire, which is a big no-no. So she believes this child that she sees to be an immortal child a threat, and because of her personal experience with what the Volturi did to her family, she goes to the Volturi and tells them what she saw, and it becomes very clear through a vision from Alice that the Volturi are now coming after the Cullens, and with the intent of killing Renesmee because they believe her to be this immortal child. So what the plot is of Breaking Dawn Part 2 is, before all of that comes to a head, the Cullens decide to start recruiting. And Carlisle apparently has the most friends of anybody I know, as him and the other Cullens. Well, Jasper and Alice, they kind of disappear without telling anyone where they're going, so they're gone for a majority of the film, and they kind of come back towards the end. But the rest of the Cullens, they go around and start recruiting all of these different vampires that are friends to Carlisle, with not the intention of bringing them to a fight, which they're delusional if they believe that, but to be, quote-unquote, a witness to Renesmee, as we find out that Renesmee has a vampire power of her own, in which she's able to show people previous events. So she's able to show people her past and how she was conceived, which is biologically through Edward and Bella. So she's able to show, which very convenient gift for the plot that's unfolding. So whatever,
I wish I knew
right there.
I wish I knew how the powers got dished out. Who gets what? How do you get better powers than others? Because let me tell you, there's some pretty good powers in this movie. But
Rami Malek shows up in this movie as, like, basically Avatar: The Last Airbender.
He's the Avatar.
He's the Avatar, as he's able to manipulate different elements. The first time we see him, he's controlling and maneuvering water, again, like he's Katara from Avatar, and does so in the final climactic fight, as he, like, breaks the ground or whatever he does.
But he takes a solid like hour to do that in the fight's time. He does nothing in that fight.
No, he does not.
He just watches people die and then uses it.
Other than cause the death of one of the werewolves accidentally. I guess that werewolf kind of sacrifices themselves.
I have a question about his power. In that fight, why would you just like split the ground open to also like be killing vampires? Like,
I
why not just create like an avalanche or something like that to like, unleash on them. And he can create smart. Right. It's shown that he can create the power out of anything. So like the fire, he doesn't even need like I don't think he needs any kind of like heat around him or like moist.
He can just conjure elements.
Yeah.
Just
doesn't use it. All right.
Well, on top of that, we find out that Irina's sister, one of the Denalis, I think that's the Denali family, they say, one of them has the power to exude electricity from her body and has very powerful electricity powers, like she's Static Shock. Again, I mentioned earlier, this one is a full-blown superhero movie.
These are not powers I would expect a vampire to have. Can't you at least make it a little bit more like vampire lore type of power? Like I buy into the mind reading. I buy into the like even looking into the future. Sure, even transferring thoughts. But now you're just building in powers in their hands that have nothing to do with their lifestyle.
Yep. Yeah. To which the one
girl has the reality stone. She has Thanos' reality stone. She just makes you see whatever she wants you to see.
I literally, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was watching it, I took a note that was in the vein of this girl. You're talking about like the Amazonian woman, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, she seems like her power is probably the most powerful one of them all. She can literally manipulate people into seeing whatever she wants. But to even further this discussion, Bella, who has been referred to in the past films as a shield, quote unquote, as Edward cannot see her mind. We talked about in last episode how it doesn't make sense that Edward can't read her mind, but Jasper can control her emotions, and Alice sees her in his visions, or her visions, and also Arrow, the leader of the Volturi, his powers don't work on her. So they're very picky and choosy on whose powers. But in this film, now that she's a vampire, she's able to project her shield powers to other vampires to shield them from opposing threats. She does so to Jane, Elle Fanning or Dakota Fanning, one of the Fanning sisters, whichever one plays Jane, to her dismay. Yeah. I kind of love in that scene, though, when she's trying to use her pain powers on other people, and Bella's casting her shield powers, and Jane has like little to no reaction, but just through her eye movements, you can tell that she's like really fucking annoyed by this.
I like how sometimes she has to say the words, what she wants you to feel, and other times she could do like no word magic, like Harry Potter.
Every time she goes, pain, it makes me fucking cackle and lose my shit, because like it's so funny.
In the flashback, like when they're like flashback to like centuries ago, she does her power and she doesn't say anything. She just thinks it. So like, why would I don't know? It's just it's silly. It's silly.
The way that the powers work in these films, and the way that the lore and the characteristics of vampires gets very unrealistic. One thing that really bothers me, and we didn't really talk about it in Eclipse or when we were kind of discussing Breaking Dawn Part 1 a little bit more, is that in the second film, New Moon, the whole reason that Edward and the Cullens have to leave is because Jasper is the newest to the vegan lifestyle and has the most difficulty controlling himself around human blood, and to the point where even before the whole incident, he has trouble controlling himself around Bella because he feasts for her blood and he lusts for her blood. But after the second movie, when they return and all the Cullens are back, Jasper never once again has a single problem with being around Bella. And seemingly being around other humans, too, because they bring Charlie into the house, and I don't think Jasper, I don't know if he's in the scene or he's not, but regardless, the illogical consistencies in these movies, and I don't care if they're YA novels, I don't care if they're children's books, like some of the early Harry Potter books are, but when you're writing a story, when you're initially writing it and when it's done and you're doing your rewrites and your edits, there has to be a part of you that becomes self-critical and says, hey, I set these things up in earlier parts or earlier installments. I need to continue that thread. I need to continue that sort of lore, even if it's a movie like Twilight where, you know, it's fun to poke fun at and laugh, but when it comes down to the actual just story writing and the shit just not matching up, and it's not like these films were released years and years apart. Again, 1 year release windows in between each of these installments. Yeah. Shit just does not add up to the point where, again, Edward, one of the things that people poked the most fun at in the early Twilight movies is they removed a core aspect of vampires, which is burning in the sun. They sparkle in the sun. They couldn't even retain that consistency. The whole reason that the Cullens live in Forks is because it's very cloudy and rains most of the time.
They go to this sunny island for a honeymoon. Like, why wouldn't you go into like somewhere kind of like similar, like the mountains? You know, I don't know. But yeah, it's really frustrating. I don't know. that these books and these movies go through like rewrites and edits, and like they get so much funding, but like no one cares sometimes to make a big product that you're dishing out so much money to. I just don't get it.
Yeah, my excuses for these films, with whether it's their intent or their target demographic, it goes completely out the window when the budgets are way higher than. It's kind of similar in a vein to people who think that The Joker 2 is fun or a good movie because it's a big fuck you to the studio. I don't care if it's intended to be a fuck you to the studio. They spent $200 million making that movie. And in a similar vein with these Twilight movies that cost over $130 million to make, put some effort and thought into what you're putting out. Mm-hmm. You know how many filmmakers and aspiring directors would kill for 1/1000th of these movies' budgets and don't ever get to do something with that money because they're not given that sort of way into the door. They're not given that foot in the door. And I understand, again, these are movies that made good amounts of money. But my God, when it comes to just the writing and the production, there's some sort of charm, I guess, in a sense, to how the Harry Potter films, they are very different in style and aesthetic from film to film. 1 and 2 being Columbus, so you got that more childlike, whimsical Alfonso Cuarón bringing in that sort of darker element to the third film while also sort of retaining that comedy. Half-Blood Prince having that sepia brown tone to it, or Order of the Phoenix having a lot of bluish in the color grade and sort of shadows and whatnot. Those sort of elements are kind of charming in those films because at the end of the day, they're well-made films with clear passion and intent behind what they're making. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like in any of these films, particularly Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2, that there's any sort of intent in the direction or the production or the writing. And it goes back to the source material a little bit, but and I know Stephenie Meyer, she was a big part of the production of these movies and didn't really want much change from the novels. But if you're going to adapt these, I really think you need to make some changes to the story. And first on the list is removing the whole groomer pedophile shit with the imprinting, because it has no purpose in these movies, and it fucking frustrates me to hell that immediately after he imprints on the baby, and I get it's supposed to be this overwhelming, intense emotion that's thrust upon this person, he immediately is like a completely different character when he is interacting with Bella and Edward. Like, there's a scene in Breaking Dawn Part 2 where he sees Edward and Bella together, and he has this stupid little smile on his face, and he goes, "You guys look really good together."
Yeah, and it also like, if you want to play him as like a protector for now, you don't lose. Like, there's no way you just lose that love you had for Bella. I don't care. Like, what? So that intense love was always for a baby that's not born yet? Like, are you kidding me? You can't really. Like, you really just lose all that, completely once you...
It makes me question why the fuck we watched him be in love with her. There's a line, actually, in Eclipse that kind of encapsulates this entire saga where... Or maybe it's Breaking Dawn Part 1. But, yeah, it is. It's Breaking Dawn Part 1, because it's when Jacob is like really concerned for Bella and thinks that she's dying and she's making this selfish decision, and he like calls her out and he's like what was the point of this all, me loving you loving him, it doesn't seem fair to either of us. It's again so fucking selfish to the point where he could not have a care for Bella in the world after this fucking baby is born and he imprints on her. And it just shows me that, again, he's just such a selfish piece of shit character.
All right, how'd you feel about the overall like fight scene at the end?
I love the fight. The fight, I think, is awesome. It's really a lot of fun. There's a lot of, it kicks off really in an intense fashion by having Carlisle be the first person to die.
I was happy with I was like, oh, finally they're like killing off people that are important.
Yeah,
like I can actually
there's
get
consequences.
Some, yeah. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it like being just like a
vision.
Vision. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it completely ruins it. And I remember having that same exact thought the first time that I had watched it, where I remember watching it for the first time, and again, this was like after 3-4 movies of really nothing of consequence really happening, nobody dying, nobody really, being a victim in these films. But then you get to this one, and you get this final fight against these Volturi characters that have been built up as just such these powerful, menacing figures, and the fight kicks off, and you're like, holy shit, they just killed Carlisle. And I love Edward's reaction. He immediately like rushes after them, and then the entire vampire fight really kicks off.
And then Jasper dies like really soon after that.
Jasper dies. Some of the werewolves die. I think it's either Leia or Seth who saves Esme from falling into the giant ditch that Rami Malek creates. And the werewolf bites the vampire and grabs him off of Esme as the werewolf falls to their death. I think it was Seth.
Seth is the one that dies, and then Leah sacrifices herself.
Seth gets like his spine crushed, right?
Or his neck, I think.
I'm getting him confused. Seth gets like bear hugged by one of the vampires from behind, and they like just squeeze him to death. So he either gets suffocated or snaps his spine or neck or one of the two. And then, like you said, Leia is the one who saves, or Leah is the one who saves Esme from dying. And Esme has this heartbroken look. She's just lost her husband. There's a lot of little great creative sequences. I like seeing, you said that Rami Malek doesn't really use his powers, but at least he does like one thing in the thing, even if it's kind of stupid. The Denali vampire, the blonde, who it really pissed me off the way she was designed and her actress, because it was like a terrible performance, but that actress and the blonde hair, she looked so much like Rosalie that every time one or the other was on, like in a scene, I was getting confused as to who was there because they looked so similar. She uses her electricity powers, and I also we didn't really bring it up, but they bring in Lee Pace in this movie to play this vampire that apparently Carlisle met years back. And he's sort of fun, and he's kind of got a little bit of charm to him. I like seeing Lee Pace in things. He's if you guys are MCU fans, he plays Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's also in Bodies, that recent horror comedy with Pete Davidson. But yeah, I liked seeing Lee Pace in it. But back to the kind of final fight, it was just cool. There was a lot of fun little kind of moments in it. It was not as short or anticlimactic as the fight in Total Eclipse. I keep calling it that. Twilight Eclipse, it was not as short and kind of stupid. I thought the editing was a little bit better in this one. It was less choppy, and you could kind of tell what was going on. And I love Bella using her shield powers to kind of shield different vampires throughout the fight, kind of using her superpower a little bit to some cool effect. But I liked it overall. I'm not sure how you felt about it.
Oh, no, I definitely enjoyed this one. It was a big step up from part one, obviously. I probably enjoyed this one more than Eclipse a little bit. This one's just kind of like a fun one, I guess.
It is. It's just fun.
Yeah. I'm trying. What was I gonna? I feel like I was gonna say something else. Fucking what's his name? Is it Michael Sheen?
Michael Sheen. Jeez,
Arl. His fucking laugh was ridiculous.
When he laughed, I think it was the hardest I laughed in this entire franchise. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen, and again, I do not like Michael Sheen as RO. I get what they're going for, but to me, it would have been just a better franchise if they had cast like a more threatening, intimidating actor in that role.
You should
to
have had
play,
that
like,
one
the
guy,
head of Volturi.
that other guy. I forget. I don't know his name. He's like,
Is he the one who just kind of accepts his death and goes, finally?
I think so. He has like, well, they all have long hair.
I know what you're talking. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's in
There's like two other main Volturi members. There's the blonde one played by Vecna from Stranger Things, and then there's the older one.
Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. I know he was in like he was in The Haunting Hour. I think it was that, but he was also in
geez.
he was in a Peacemaker. I think
Maybe.
he's in that. He's in a lot of stuff, but he can actually like. I would buy into him being like the intimidating lead.
Agreed. I actually was
he's
thinking
also-
the same thing while watching. Yeah.
If you watch like, if you saw him in The Haunting Hour, you would see where Jared Leto got his inspiration for the Joker. I'm just gonna say that.
Well, then I don't need to see that then. Yeah, I liked sort of the end of the fight where right before you find out that it's a stupid vision and none of this has mattered, which is probably makes me hate the fight. But I again from like a choreography and just entertainment standpoint, it is fun. But I like Edward and Bella teaming up to take down Aro or Arrow. Again, I still don't know how to say it.
I think it's Aro. Yeah.
I think different characters pronounce it differently, but Aro, yeah, they kind of tag team, take him down, and I enjoyed that sort of aspect. And it just makes me beg to.
He seemed a little easy to defeat.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know, his whatever. Again, I don't know, maybe it's Bella's newborn strength, but yeah, I kind of liked the fight. It was for some reason in this movie we get more character development for more characters than we've gotten in all four of the previous ones, as they do build a relationship between the Denali girl and Lee Pace's character. You get some sort of, a little bit more backstory about some of the characters. You get more personality out of them. I do think Rami Malek is kind of fun in the role that he's in. Also, I think his girlfriend or wife in the film, she's from. I was trying to nail down, and then I looked it up. She's from season 1 of Westworld. If anybody has seen that, she plays one of the android characters. But yeah, I mean, I liked kind of the recruitment process. It was fun. At least you got some fun different locations. It kept the plot moving.
Yeah, it felt similar to Eclipse a little bit. Just kind of like spending the time like building the different armies and stuff like that. It felt very similar to that.
It did, but I think it was handled better. Like in Twilight Eclipse, it's more so you just kind of get more development of the werewolves, who we've already met a majority of them, other than like Seth and Leia. But you don't really get much development with Victoria's army. Like, you don't get much from Riley other than he's being manipulated by Victoria,
Right.
and his parents are looking for him. And I guess you get the little girl who is, I guess I'm supposed to give a shit about, but I really just don't. And she just becomes. At first, I was like, "Oh, cool! Like a new little, the Cullens can adopt her and take her in, and she could be like a new character." And then the Volturi are like, "Nope, psych! We're just gonna kill that bitch," even though it really was not her fault. And but in this one, at least, all the people that they're recruiting, all of the vampires that come to Carlisle's aid, you do get a little bit more character, a little more personality development. I kind of like the Romanian guys. For any fans of Shameless out there, the character of Mickey is in this movie. I think his name is Noel Gallagher. He's in it as one of the two Romanians, and I kind of wish we got a little bit more of their characters, because in the quote-unquote lore of Twilight, I guess the Romanians they were the king shit of the vampire world before the Volturi took them out and burned all their castles down, and I think they said they've been waiting 1,500 years for revenge.
Wow, they must be so weak.
Yeah, I know, right? Age really does a number on vampires. But I thought it was kind of fun how, like we said, the fight ultimately ends up not mattering because it's all a vision that Alice shows Aro, basically showing, hey, this is what will happen if you come after us, like, you're gonna die. To which they then bring out another child who is of Renesmee's sort of characteristics and how she was born, but he is someone who was born from a mortal mother and a vampire father, and so he is proof and evidence, and this is where you find out where Jasper and Alice have been the entire movie. They were finding a witness that was the same as Renesmee, not just someone who could attest to her lineage and how she was born, but also the same case. And so he mentions he can survive on blood or human food, and he stopped aging when he was fully developed and fully grown. So I guess that kind of clears up when Renesmee will stop this rapid growth and rapid aging. And again, they don't say whether it's dependent on the specific person or vampire. So I assume she's going to stop aging at like 21, 22 or something. But it makes me beg the question why Alice didn't just bring that character out right from the start and be like, hey, this is like a case of this, Renesmee will be fine. She'll be okay. Here's evidence. Instead of just letting all of that other shit play out. I mean, I guess we would have been robbed of a really cool vampire fight, but...
Well, I think you want to also spark a little intimidation there.
Yeah, I guess so. But what I wanted to say about the Romanians is... because the Romanians are Noel Gallagher and the other guy, they are there to fight. Like, they want to kill the Volturi, and everybody else kind of wants to avoid a fight with the Volturi. Other than towards the end when they decide to kill Irina because she gave false information to them and made false claims. And the Denali sisters are not quite happy about that. But, I don't know, because... Either way, stupid idea to try to pick a fight with them. But the Volturi are like, all right, we're just going to split. We're just gonna head out then. And the two Romanian guys are like, what do you mean? They're on the run. Let's go get them. And they chase after the Volturi, which again I kind of mentioned a little earlier in the episode. But you're initially led to believe that the Volturi are just powerful because they have weapons like Jane and her brother Alec, who again has these like smoke power, shadow powers or whatever. Again, we don't learn about him until this movie or the previous one. I can't exactly recall because they blend together so easily. But then you do see the Volturi at the beginning, and they have so many more people than the Cullens have. Now, the Cullens recruit like a decent amount of vampires to fight on their side, but the Volturi outnumber them like 5-1. Like, you see the Volturi, and it's just like dozens and dozens of vampires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they have numbers. So that's it. Just say that. Just say the Volturi have more numbers than us. Don't bullshit me. Just say they outnumber us. I don't understand. Why are you lying to me? I'm already mad at you. Why are you lying? I did want to bring up something that I forgot to mention when discussing Breaking Dawn Part 1, and it's that when they initially submitted the film to the MPAA for a rating, the movie got an R rating. And this is Breaking Dawn Part 1. Can you guess why it got an R rating the first time around?
I don't know. Like, is it too intimate? Too much sexual content?
So you're sort of right. Apparently, and this is something I kind of already knew about the MPAA, but apparently they are PG-13 if you don't show nudity, and you can get away with sex scenes in PG-13, especially if you don't show like any sort of nudity. But they have very strict policies about how much thrusting you can do in a scene. And apparently, according to the MPAA, it was not Robert Pattinson, but it was good old Bella Swan, Kristen Stewart, who was thrusting too much during those sex scenes, and that's what caused the film to get an R rating the first time around.
Wow. That is so particular.
Yeah. I just thought that was kind of fun, and I thought that I would sprinkle that in, and I kind of forgot to mention it, but...
Man, I still can't get over the Jacob and Ness. Jacob and Ness.
Oh, yeah, we forgot. We kind of loosely brought it up, but Jacob decides to give good old little Renesmee a nickname, Nessie, to which Bella has the appropriate response, which is, and this might be Kristen Stewart's best acting in this entire franchise, but when she says, "You named my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster?" and proceeds to try to beat the shit out of Jacob, which is always fun. We love to see Jacob get his ass kicked. But yeah, no, well, again, it's not only the fact that they introduce it, it's they double down on it. Like you said, he makes that little joke to Edward towards the end where he's like, "What should I start calling you Dad now?" But also, again, Alice's vision, like I brought up, where she literally sees, and again, whatever, they're subjective, but when she literally sees the future and sees a grown-up Renesmee and Jacob as an item, it's just so uncomfortable. It's so pedophile-esque. It's so
I hate how
groomery.
I hate how smiley he is the entire film about it too. Like it's like he can't wait. He can't wait till that 18th birthday.
Yeah, it's so unnecessary. Like I had seen someone kind of talk about this online, and it would have been such a better alternative, but they kind of show, and I'm not sure if it's this film or if it's because we didn't really mention, but it's not just people who recruit. It's not just the Cullens recruiting vampires, but because Jacob imprinted on Renesmee, the pack cannot harm her. So they're kind of bound by that, which doesn't make sense because Jacob left their pack. But we'll just not address that. But they can't hurt Renesmee now, and so they're all fine, and they're back on the Cullen side, and they help again. We kind of brought up Leia and Seth, but other werewolves. The rest of the pack, they kind of stand up. But there's a point where you see that Jacob is recruiting. It's got to be an Eclipse because that's when, or no, it's got to be Breaking Dawn Part 1, because you see stray people who don't have a pack, stray new werewolves who join Jacob's new pack. So someone said, well, why didn't they just give Jacob a new love interest by introducing it like a new female werewolf that was not a baby?
Yeah.
And just have him imprint on her. Instead, they went the route of Jacob imprinting on a fucking baby, which, again, what does that add to the story? It's not cute. It's not romantic. It's not fun or playful or deep or intimate. It's just gross and nasty and really just makes so much of the film really, really uncomfortable to watch. Like, I hate seeing scenes with Jacob and Renesmee together because all I can think about is... He's just waiting for her to be of age so that they can be an item.
And he can't like just give one fucking day and have it just be a mother-daughter day in the snow and just let them play. He's got to be there at all times. Please go away. Please. I don't even get how you're supposed to expect to always have your eye on her, cuz if you take your eye off her once, are you breaking the law in like the wolf code?
Yeah.
Like, and I just don't get it.
We didn't even because I guess Bella fully comes around. We didn't even discuss their sort of backup plan, which is if a fight does ensue and break out, Jacob is the one in charge of taking Renesmee and going into hiding to protect her and keep her safe. Can we all just address he is 17 years old? 17, 18? The character, yes.
I thought he was at this point like 18.
18. He is not old enough or responsible enough to be taking care of a newborn child. I understand she's grown up rapidly, but do not leave a child in the hands of an 18-year-old.
And then they say, I forget the guy's name, but the guy that's like her, he said he didn't fully mature until he was like 7, and he was like fully like matured. And like, so like...
Yeah, it took him 7 years to reach full maturity.
Well, like I think how like they grow into their like once they hit set because she's growing. She's only like 6 months, right?
She's only been around for a couple months, but she looks like 8 or 9.
That means in that flashback, she's probably like 7 years old.
I guess their minds mature. I'm not defending it, but I guess that's the assumption is that their minds mature at the same because
Fine.
She doesn't act like a baby per se. It's not like a Poor Things situation where the character genuinely acts like a child. I mean, they act like a child, but they don't act like a baby.
Well, no, but by the time she is 7, she will be like grown up. I thought.
Yeah, that's what they say is that character. I forget his name, but the one who's like Renesmee, he reached full maturity at 7. Like so, it took him 7 human years to reach his full. Like he stopped growing after 7 years. Either way, it's still gross. It's still stupid, and it's just again like this. All right, so the film kind of wraps up. The Volturi go their separate way. They kill Irina and all of the vampires who came to the aid of the Cullens. They sort of dissipate. They go their separate ways. And that's sort of where we get that moment where Alice has the vision of the future. And you're supposed to get by Edward's reaction that he read her mind and saw that future that she saw, and it makes him smile. Which you've hated Jacob for like multiple movies. So I don't know why you'd be happy that he imprinted on your daughter. That's neither here nor there. And the film kind of wraps up with Bella showcasing one more new unique power in which she is able to showcase Edward a collage, a montage, if you will, of all of their best moments together over a Christina Perri song, 1,000 Years, which if you were listening to music or the radio when that song came out, they overplayed the fuck out of that song. But they play that song as you see a montage of Edward and Jacob's, like I said, best moments together, all of their romance. Again, the greatest love story ever told on film, maybe in the history of humanity as a whole. So if you don't really want to watch all of these movies, you could probably just watch this little tribute video that looks like it was edited and made by like a YouTuber.
Yeah,
you could do that, so you don't have to sit through.
It's a
10 hours of this.
It's like a homemade Twilight music video for that song.
It really, that is the vibe it gives off. Homemade Twilight video, like it's absurd. It's so absurd. But that kind of closes out the film. All is happy and well. Edward and Bella are getting to live out their happily ever after. They got literally everything because they even got to have like a child that,
everything worked out so perfectly.
Jacob, for as selfish as he's been, he gets what he wants. All is well that ends well in the world of Twilight. I really wish that I could have sprinkled more kind of trivia throughout these movies as we were discussing them, but there really wasn't a lot that was particularly interesting. It's usually shit like, during the graduation scene, it was actually right when Kristen Stewart got her actual degree, so it coincided. One thing I didn't really mention, but one fun fact is that Jasper and Alice in the early films, her hair is just stylized, and that's why she's got like that kind of crazy hair. Mm-hmm. And in the later films, she wears a wig. And Jasper is the opposite, where he wears a wig throughout the first couple films. And then if you notice in Breaking Dawn Part 1, when Emmett and Jasper go to kind of take him away, that's his normal hair. So he stops wearing a wig. So we go from wig to normal hair to normal hair to wig. So that's, I guess, a fun trivia fact. But yeah, I mean, overall, that's sort of the kind of through line through these movies. There's really not a lot of plot going on. A lot of it is just really poorly done romance, a love triangle, quote unquote, of sorts. That really isn't a love triangle. It's more of Jacob just not being able to take a hint for movies on end up until he again imprints on a newborn baby. And that's again just the worst thing that you could have written. Out of all the things you could have written, that is probably the worst one.
Yeah, like that made it as like the top idea. Like, oh yeah, people are gonna love this. Yeah.
But in terms of, I guess, these movies, I appreciate Twilight, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn Part 2 for at least having something driving the narrative, whereas New Moon and Breaking Dawn Part 1, there's things that happen, scenes happen, characters talk to each other, but there's not really anything moving the film forward. It's just kind of a lot of just nothingness. And that's a lot of these movies. And I wish they had kept the color grade for all of them, because that would have been kind of fun. And I wish they kept how edgy and cliche and goofy and silly and cringy all of the scenes were in the first one, because it would have made these movies a lot more fun, because man, by the end of it, it really got taxing. But that's really kind of all of my thoughts on Eclipse, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2.
I mean, I'm ready for ratings. I don't have any more notes on these movies.
All right. We'll give our ratings, and then I want to do a quick ranking. We'll rank all of them.
Yeah.
So do you want me to start off, or would you like to kick things off?
I can start.
Get right into it.
I'm going to give Eclipse a 3.1 out of 10.
All right. I guess that's me then. I will give Twilight Eclipse a 3.5 out of 10. It's a lot more entertaining than New Moon is. A lot more happens. And again, you just have something at least propelling you forward. You can kind of see what the film is building towards. And again, I did like those sort of little backstories for Jasper and Rosalie. At least you added some character depth to these characters. So that was appreciated, I guess. But yeah. So I guess that leaves me to kick off with Breaking Dawn Part 1. I am giving Breaking Dawn Part 1 a 1.8 out of 10. It is such a boring, uneventful piece of shit movie where at least there's some fun, stupid shit in in the first Twilight and New Moon. And even though New Moon is also very boring, you get some moments of enjoyment. I really enjoyed nothing in Part 1. So, yeah.
I'm going to give Part 1 a 2.2, which I think is a 0.1 above New Moon. They're both pretty equal to me in terms of like how shit they are. Again, like I probably was more entertained with New Moon, but I think there was like a little less noticeably poor things in Part 1, whereas like I was just like, this is really just like boring and bland.
Yeah,
I guess
that's
yeah.
Can't argue with that. So that leaves you to start us with Breaking Dawn Part 2.
I really thought before going into this it would be above like some of these, but I'm going with a 2.9 out of 10. I really think there's a lot of stuff that like hurts it. In terms of like just the writing choices, I just don't understand. And like, I don't know, all those powers were fun, but I don't get like just little things like that, just like thrown in there where it's like you didn't get anything prior to that. But yeah, I don't know. I think Eclipse feels like it stands a little bit more solid on its own 2 feet. Even though there's more fun in Part 2, I think there's more noticeable like offensive things in that movie.
Yeah, no, again, I'm not going to argue with any of that. I'm going to be a little bit higher, I guess, on Breaking Part 2, just because I did find it mildly more entertaining, despite some of the, again, very gross creative decisions in terms of plot. I'm going to try to not hold that against the movie as much, since that was the book's problem. And again, like I said, Stephenie Meyer had a hand in all these productions, so I'm going to assume she would not let the studio change that, which means it's even crazier that she doubled down even harder. But I'm going to give it a 3.9 out of 10. I think it's the second most entertaining out of the first film. The fight scene, even though it doesn't actually happen in the context of the story,
that's what I was thinking. That got ruined. That got ruined for me too.
No, I agree. Yeah. But it is entertaining, and the powers are stupid, and they're not really explained, and they don't really feel like powers that vampires would have. But at the very least, it was entertaining. I did like the recruitment stuff, and again, we do get a little bit more development and personality out of the array of vampires that we're introduced to in this movie. It makes me kind of wish that the previous films had just done less dumb, boring, stupid romance and had actually been fantasy movies and explored more of those elements, like dig deeper into the lore, actually make it feel like I'm watching a vampire saga and not just a romance saga that happens to have their werewolves and vampires in it,
Yeah.
All right, and I'll start us off with rankings, because it's going to be pretty quick for me. In orders of worst to best, I'm going to kick off with Breaking Dawn Part 1 as my least favorite. I just think it's the most boring nothing out of all of them. It really could have been an hour-and-a-half movie. It did not need to drag itself out for 2 hours. Nothing happens. It's super uneventful. And I think we said enough about that. At number 4, I'm going to put New Moon, almost as boring as Breaking Dawn Part 1, but at least it gives me a little bit more to chew on. And we do get the introduction to the werewolves. And despite Jacob being a shit character, it is kind of fun to open up more avenues and add a little bit more to the world of Twilight, which I kind of appreciated. Coming in at number 3, we're going to do Twilight Eclipse. Again, it does have a little bit of a driving narrative. I like seeing the newborn army getting raised in Seattle. It's not great, but it's something. And yeah, you get some nice shots in the snow that are sometimes aesthetically pleasing, I guess, even if they're kind of boring. And yeah, I don't know. There is a couple funnier moments in Eclipse, like what, don't you know that I'm hotter than you, or is it because I'm hotter than you? Whatever Jacob says is kind of funny. And I like that little moment that you brought up in the tent. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Breaking Dawn Part 2. A lot of it is just because I like the final fight, even though it doesn't matter. I do kind of like that final fight. It's fun. It's entertaining. Seeing the powers used in not creative ways, but just seeing the powers used, I guess it gave me something to kind of have fun with. And again, I like some of the newer additions to the cast. I like seeing Lee Pace. I like some of the early seasons of Shameless, so seeing Noel Gallagher show up was pretty cool. And even though we should have gotten more development from these characters and probably introduced to them earlier on, there's just some fun little moments. I didn't really mention it, but I brought it up, but I do like that scene when the one Volturi member that you were talking about, I forget the character and actor's name, but when he just accepts his death, because you really get a sense in his line delivery, like he's really just been waiting to die. Like he's been alive so long that he's really ready to just get the fuck out of here. But yeah, it's entertaining. And of course, coming in at number 1 is the first Twilight. It's not a good film. It's not a well-made film, but at the very least, it's super entertaining. Not mildly entertaining like Breaking Dawn Part 2 or Eclipse, but genuinely just a fun movie to poke fun at. And again, I just appreciate the style. I appreciate that they, at least maybe in the wrong direction, but it has a very unique look, very distinct look to it that the other Twilight movies just never encapsulate again. And again, the dialogue and exposition and delivery of the dialogue and performances are just so weird and unusual that it's just a delight to watch. And again, vampire baseball. So it's got vampire baseball. And that's enough for me.
So I'll probably do like more of a recap for Twilight and New Moon when I get to them, because we just did a whole episode. So, and I'll probably just repeat a lot of things that Jake said, because I think we were on the same page with a lot of stuff. But at number 5, the lowest one, New Moon for me. I don't think it's a secret that Jacob is my least favorite character. I think he's like the worst main character, at least in this franchise. But you get the most of him, and it's just. I couldn't be any more bored with that, and it's just like there's nothing positive I could have said about that movie that much. So that's number 5 for me. Number 4 is going to be Breaking Dawn Part 1. It feels very similar to New Moon, where a whole lot of nothing happens, but I'm just going to give it to like at least I get a little bit more of like it feels like matured interactions between Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson. So it goes like a 0.1 above that, but both terrible. Number 3, Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's just so. I was just so distracted with that plot point the entire time. It never left. It was just like, I get you got to kind of do what the author wants, but I don't know. Maybe you could try to like at least wean out some of it or not harp on it so much. I don't know.
Don't double down.
Yeah, and it just felt very. Jake made a good point. It felt very superhero-y to me. So it just felt very kind of like out of place when that part happened, like too action-y and kind of strayed away from like the fantasy elements, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, number 2 is Eclipse. This one feels like kind of like the most grounded in terms of just like its writing and character interactions. You finally get that official love triangle where it's like you have that drama built in there. It's not good drama, but it's some kind of drama in there. I really don't feel that bored with that one, even though like I don't know. There's that one's still entertaining to me. And of course, number 1 is Twilight. I'm actually shocked that is number 1 before watching these. I didn't think. Yeah. It's really annoying to say that that's the best one, because I respect the effort. I don't really respect the style of it, or I don't even appreciate the style. I guess I appreciate it in the sense of I think every other one is just boring. So Twilight just has like the most enjoyment of it. It has the most charm to it. So, and that one wins by a small percentage. Small.
Fully agree with everything that you had said. It's not that I really disagree with any of your placements. One thing that I noticed throughout both of these discussions, and especially kind of highlighted in our final thoughts on these, is that we're never like particularly like, hey, this is good. It's more so just, hey, it did something. It's not a good thing, but it did something.
Yeah.
That's kind of the crux of these movies. They get good when they do, not good. They get watchable when they do anything of substance. Not even substance. Style, aesthetic, maybe. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of highlight one last thing about the franchise as a whole. The entire Twilight film series grossed more than $3.36 billion worldwide over the course of the 5 films, which is, again, it's a very successful franchise. They may not be good movies, love them or hate them. They're successful, and they kind of did take the world by storm. I know we kind of poked fun at that, especially in the first episode, but they were massively successful. And yeah, you know, as they should. They spent a lot of money on these movies, and I don't know really where the budget went. I guess in the last one I can kind of see a lot of special effects, but
yeah,
my God,
not sure.
My God. But yeah, that kind of concludes things, guys. I hope you enjoyed listening to our Twilight discussions. I hope we didn't bore you guys to death. These were kind of some of the more fun episodes, in my opinion, to record. It's always fun when it's a franchise that is kind of universally known as not being good, so you can kind of have a little bit more leeway when you, I don't want to say bash it, but really just kind of pull it apart, which I had a lot of fun doing. They weren't exactly the most fun to watch, except for the first one. I did have fun watching the first one, but they were kind of taxing. And but hey, you know, I love doing it. I love discussing these movies with you. Would you like to let the folks know what we are discussing on the next episode, the next franchise we're breaking into?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the order because I know we set up February for, I'm pretty sure, are we doing 50 Shades of Grey?
We are absolutely doing
Yep.
50 Shades of Grey, and for
Probably
those
better
unaware,
to do before Valentine's Day.
right in time for Valentine's Day for you guys. We thought it would be fun to kind of tackle some trilogies that discuss love and are about love and passion in time for February. So if that gives you any clue to what we might be talking about after 50 Shades of Grey. But of course, we'll let you guys know in the next episode what the following recommendation is, as we are going to be discussing all 50 Shades of Grey in one episode. It's going to be one of our trilogy episodes. I don't think it'll be quite as long as some of the Harry Potter ones or even this one, because I find that I might have a lot less to say about 50 Shades of Grey. But if you guys didn't know, 50 Shades of Grey, before the book was written, actually started out as Twilight fan fiction. So the author of those books actually originally was just writing Twilight fan fiction, and somehow got massively popular and became an actual book series. Obviously, the names were changed and whatnot. So if you want to know what Twilight meets BDSM looks or sounds like, stay tuned for the next episode of Franchise Deep Dive, where we unpack all of that good stuff. But in the meantime, Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Got a little question for you.
I'm all ears.
How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh?
How many?
10 tickles.
That's pretty good.
I like that one. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for listening. We really do appreciate it. And feel free to leave a comment down below. I'd love to know what everybody's personal rankings is for the Twilight franchise. I feel like at this point, everyone can agree that the first one is the most entertaining. But let us know in the comments down below what you guys think of the Twilight Saga, what you thought of these discussions. And we have a couple things planned out in terms of franchises that we're doing in the future, but nothing is fully set in stone. So if you guys want to leave any recommendations for franchises that you would like us to kind of tap into, if they're larger ones, I would say like 8 to 10 or more. Maybe that's one that we're probably saving for another day, because those episodes would take up a lot of time, not in terms of just watching them, but also just if it's a 10 movie franchise, there's no way we can pack that into 2 episodes. So we'd have to really kind of, Harry Potter alone took us three different parts. So be mindful of that if you do recommend something like Fast and Furious or something horror related like Halloween or Friday the 13th, we're probably going to get to it. It's just when we want to plan watching those and discussing them. But obviously, you guys can find us anywhere you get your podcast. People seem to like us the most on YouTube, so you can listen to us here on my personal YouTube channel, Former Film Student, where I talk about other movie and TV related content. I have some video ideas kind of rolling around in my head, so they may or may not be out by the time you guys listen to this. But make sure to subscribe here. Again, leave a comment. Make sure to like the video. Click the little bell notification button so you get notified when I post new videos as well as when these episodes air. But keep in mind, we do air every other Tuesday. And also, you can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We're on both of those platforms as well. Leave us a comment on Spotify. Not sure if you can do it on Apple Podcasts. Also, make sure to rate us 5 out of 5 stars. Or if you want to be a little constructively criticizing, leave us a 4.5 out of 10. I'd be fine with that. But yeah, and again, comment over there and follow us over there. And like I said, every other Tuesday, we come at you guys with a new episode of Franchise Deep Dive, the show where we dissect, discuss, and break down all of your favorite and least favorite movie franchises. And before I pass it over to Josh, so he can kind of close us out, I would also say, we have Patreon now, guys. So if you like our content and you want to check us out and support us, you can do that over on Patreon, Franchise Deep Dive. You can find us there where we post bonus episodes. Currently, we're doing Watchlist Wednesdays, which air opposite of our normal episodes every other Wednesday. So on the weeks that you don't get a normal episode from us, you can check us out over there. We do Watchlist Wednesdays, like I said, where we just recommend each other films that either one of us has seen and the other hasn't, or neither of us have seen. We've done episodes so far on Being John Malkovich, so you can check that out. That was actually free for everyone, so that was kind of just our little way of giving you guys a taste of the kind of bonus content that you'd get over on that other platform. But I also have some ideas on some solo stuff that I can do, and even I have some ideas I can throw Josh's way on other bonus content that we plan on doing. But once again, next episode will be on 50 Shades of Grey, so if you don't want to be spoiled for those movies, make sure to check those out before next episode, or if you don't care about spoilers, then stay tuned for not next Tuesday, but the following one. And that really is it for me. If you have anything more, Josh?
Yeah, so just tune in with us on the loving season of Valentine's Day for 50 Shades of Grey. Give us a follow on Instagram. That's going to be our main spot where we update you, do little fun posts, and interact with us any way you want. You can email us or DM us, and we will respond to anything you got. But thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Jake. Had a blast talking about Twilight.
I did too. I don't know if you mentioned it, but our email is franchisedeepdive@gmail.com. So if you're old fashioned, you want to hit us up with an email. Our name is also Franchise Deep Dive over on Instagram, and Facebook. So check us out over there. More active on Instagram though. But yeah, we let you guys, like Josh said, he does little fun posts, and we also let you guys know ahead of time what we're talking about, as well as when new episodes air over there. But again, your best bet, subscribe, follow us so that you do get those notifications that a new episode is out, or you can just pay attention, and like I said, every other Tuesday. But that is it for today, guys. Again, I hope you enjoyed the Twilight discussion. I know we probably went a little long, as we particularly do. Hey, if you like shorter episodes, like I said, our Patreon with our bonus content, those usually are only around an hour or so. Some might be a little bit shorter than others, but if you like shorter episodes, definitely support us over on Patreon. So that's really it. Goodbye, guys.
Later, guys.